A Thursday edition of the Sports Bash starts now. What's up, everybody? I'm your host, Mike Gill. Josh Henning producing today's show. You out there? I got a whole bunch of stuff to dive into today across Eagles, Phillies, Sixers. We'll get into all of it today on the Sports Bash Live. The one thing I want to start with today is last night, the Mic'd Up on NFL Network. If you didn't get a chance to watch it, kind of gives you back a little bit of the feeling, the memories, the moments of the Philadelphia Eagles championship win. I tweeted out, I would have to imagine that the Eagles Mic'd Up segment on NFL Network last night was from 8 to 9, probably outrated the Sixer game last night, which they lost again to the bum Nets. But there were moments in that mic'd up segment that kind of make you understand why this team was different. If you watched it last night, let me know your favorite moment of the mic'd up last night. I got a couple of moments that really stand out to me. But one of them that we really found out last night, mic'd up NFL Network last night, was the it goes through quickly the whole game in an hour, but it gives you like all of the players kind of talking to each other on the sidelines. You get a couple of the radio calls, a couple of the television calls. You get a little bit of everything. But I think the one thing that stood out in the mic'd up segment last night that jumps off the page for me, and I'm seeing if you guys out there listening and watching would agree, 609-403-0973, right? Jalen Hurts essentially telling Saquon Barkley, like, he's the Pete Rose of that team. Like, he was the missing piece, right? He was the guy they were missing. You know, Barkley comes over to Hurts, and Hurts is like, you know, you finished this. You completed this. You're the reason why we're here. And there's another thing that Jalen Hurts said. If you notice when he walked off the field, there was a guy who walked up to him. Did you catch, Josh? Did you watch this last night, the mic'd up segment?
I watched most of it, yeah.
Hold on a second. That's my bad. Go ahead.
I watched most of it. I didn't catch the whole thing.
So at the end,
I saw the part you're talking about, you know, the Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley. I saw that, yeah.
So at the end of I guess it was right towards the end, when the Eagles end up winning the Super Bowl and they go running out on the field, Hurts is walking out on the field. And there's a guy who walks up to him and says, "Congratulations, Super Bowl MVP." And Hurts says, "No, I'm Super Bowl champion." So, like, basically him saying the MVP is insignificant to me. This is a team achievement, and that matters more than winning the MVP. So there are two things there that Jalen Hurts really shows. He goes out of his way to let Saquon Barkley know, we could not do this without you. You are the MVP. He says, don't care. I'm a Super Bowl champion. That's another one. There was a moment during the mic'd up last night, and listen, I'd love for you guys, for those of you who watched it out there, and if you didn't watch it, I'm sure it'll re-air on NFL Network plenty of times, but it was really cool. What was your favorite thing that you heard on the mic'd up last night that kind of give you indication? I thought there were a lot of great moments for Nick Sirianni last night. How about the moment when he tells Kellen Moore, like, if we score here, the game's over, go for it? Like, basically telling him, I guess Kellen Moore probably said to him, hey, like, we got this play. Should we run it here? You know, like, this play's in our back pocket. Do we want to run it right here? And Sirianni's essentially like, we score here, this game's over, go for it.
Right, he gave him the Mortal Kombat line. Finish him.
Yeah, basically put your foot on their neck and finish him right now. I thought that was a standout moment in the thing last night. 609-403-0973. Hey, Mike, the mic'd up was awesome. What stood out to me was what a leader Saquon is, constantly keeping everybody calm, telling them 0-0, don't fall for buying into what the score is. You know, I was going to bring that up. That was the next one there, was early in the game on the penalty call on A.J. Brown. And Saquon Barkley's on the sideline, and he's like, don't worry about it. Forget about it. Next play. Move on. You know, he did not want them to let that penalty call affect them at all. You're right. Whoever sent that text message, didn't leave a name, but the penalty call early in that game really could have changed the dynamics of that game. I mean, right off the bat, you're like, here we go with this, the officiating. It was a ticky-tack call. Pereira said he didn't like the call. Brady certainly didn't like the call. So that could have really had the Eagles kind of off their game early, and Saquon Barkley come. But Saquon Barkley is the glue for that team. I mean, it's him and Hurts, but how about Barkley? He looks at Cooper DeJean, and he's like, that's a heck of a birthday present. But if you keep this going, you're going to get an even better present. In other words, you're going to win the Super Bowl if you keep playing the way that you're playing. So that was really cool. Conversely, on the other sideline, you saw how bewildered they were. The Chiefs were just like, wow. There's at one point, I don't know who it was. It might have been Xavier Worthy or somebody. Who wears number 5 for them? But he just looked over at whoever and was like,
I think it's Hollywood Brown.
They're just attacking us like they're relentless. Like at some point of that game, some of the Chiefs just realized they're relentless. Like they're not giving up. And then how about the moment where Zach Bond taps Cooper DeJean and he points up to the scoreboard and he's like, we haven't blitzed once yet. We haven't blitzed at all today. 38% blitz percentage. Like, he couldn't even believe it. He's like, dude, we got 38% percentage and we haven't even blitzed yet. Like, that was pretty cool to see some of the reaction on the sideline. Let me know what your favorite moment of the mic'd up was last night. 609-403-0973.
The Zach Bond DeJean was actually my favorite moment of the mic'd up because it kind of reminded me of, like, these guys are in the middle of this intense competition, and they kind of just took a step back in the middle of the game, and we're just like, dude, can you believe this is going on right now? Like, they almost had like a out-of-body moment, like an out-of-game moment in the game.
Bond, when he said, I'm going to get mine, the interception, and then he said, hey, I dropped that in practice the other day. He had that opportunity. He's like, I dropped that same pass came in practice, and I dropped it the other day. He's like, I'm not letting that happen. Jeff in Ocean City. What's up, Jeff? He says, a lot of great moments for Mic'd Up. I gained some respect from Mahomes in his congratulation to Hurts. Smith was very emotional when talking to Hurts. That was cool. Yeah, I was going to get to that too. When Hurts essentially is telling Devontae, like, you earned this. We've gone through so much together. We've had so many ups and downs, me and you. And here we are. Now we're at the top of the mountain. Like, we started together. We had a little bump in the road. We've gone through some bumps in the road. But this is for you. You deserve that dime. By the way, that was a dime from Hurts to Smith. He's like, and you deserved it. It's in your home state. This is your home, man. So you saw Devontae Smith. I mean, he was really emotional the fact that, holy mackerel, I just won the Super Bowl. I'm going to win the Super Bowl. By the way, people are texting in that the Mic'd Up segment apparently is on YouTube. So while you go over to YouTube to look for the Mic'd Up segment, how about subscribing to at Mike Gill Show on YouTube so you can watch the show live there. And then, of course, you can watch the Mic'd Up segment. There were so many other things. I thought Barkley was a big, big star of that. I thought Sirianni had some really good moments in there as well as now you see not a different side of Sirianni. You see the side of Sirianni that I think rubs people the wrong way sometimes, where he's running up and down the sidelines. He is cheering as if he's like one of the towel wavers, right? And I think some people have this picture in their head of what an NFL head coach should be and act like.
And it's not that.
And it's not him running up the sideline, kicking his feet up in the air. Like, he looks like one of the towel wavers. He looks like a hanger-on who's just kind of like, how did that guy get on the sideline? Like, what's his role? No, he's the head coach of the Super Bowl champions. That's how he got to the sidelines. But there are a lot of things that he says and does throughout that mic'd up segment that really stand out. Like, he's standing right next to Kellen Moore, and those two guys are talking. He's basically saying, like, there was one play where he tells Kellen Moore they're at a spot in the game, and he's like, hey, let's dial some, like, downhill run up. You like, basically, you pick the play, but what about that? So it kind of gives you some indication of what the communication between those two is on a game day.
And it goes back to, when Sirianni months ago, when they asked him, well, what is your role in the offense? He says, well, Kellen Moore is driving the car. I'm just sitting in the passenger seat. So that was a great example of what Sirianni said earlier in the year.
Yeah, a little backseat driver from time to time, right? Hey, maybe you should make a left right here. 609-403-0973. If you watched the Mic'd Up last night, what was one of your favorite moments, and what did you learn about the Eagles Super Bowl championship team in that Mic'd Up show last night? You know, one of the other things that I think you got an appreciation for, what was it the one time, too, where A.J. scored the touchdown and he comes over and there's one point where he's reading the Inner Excellence book, and Sirianni walks over to him, and he's like, hey, can you read me a passage, man? Like, you can see this little playful, interaction between him and AJ and the respect that they have for each other. Also, as we hit Thursday, the parade is tomorrow. By the way, anybody going to the parade in the listening audience, if you're going to the parade tomorrow, 609-403-0973. Let me know if you're going to the parade tomorrow. I got tips for you, okay? I've seen this. Did you see this circulating around social media?
I did not.
So tips for the Eagles Super Bowl parade for tomorrow. Number 1, go early. If you want a good spot at the Art Museum, prepare to get there between, are you ready for this? Prepare to get there between 3 and 6 a.m.
Sounds like Nick Earnshaw.
Right? I think Earnshaw said he was going at 4:30 in the morning.
He was,
That's
yeah.
not going to be good enough, it sounds like. Well, between 3 and 6. It also suggests, by the way, to camp out overnight. If you want a more low-key, family-friendly experience, the sports complex area will be less crowded. So you got the opportunity to go at between 3 and 6 o'clock in the morning. I'm out on that.
Yeah, no, that's enough for me.
All right, that's number 1. Let's see. Number 2. We'll put it up on the YouTube screen here for the people watching on YouTube. There you go. Tips for the Eagles Super Bowl parade. That's number 1. Number 2, plan transportation. If you are taking Patco, SEPTA, BSL, etc., buy your tickets now. There will not be tickets day of for most, and some stops will be closed.
That makes a lot of sense.
So you want to get your transportation. Now, the Jersey people, I guess you got to drive over the bridge first?
Either that or you can go to the bus stop. What's that, outside Hamilton, I think? And you can
Take the
jump
train in from there?
Yeah.
Number 3. I don't know how many people in the audience are going to take me up on this one, but it says drink minimally. The porta potties are impossible to get to.
Oh, no.
Once you leave your spot, good luck getting back.
Oh, geez.
That's a tough one, right?
That's a real tough one. I mean, now you're basically asking people to not do the one thing that's like the biggest thing of all things.
Well, you want to indulge a little bit and have a good time with the team. So apparently the parade starts at 11, and the speeches start at 2.
So is it something where if you say, hey, I'm going to get my spot with my buddies, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then each one of you takes a turn going to the
Gonna have
bathroom
to.
before 11.
Yeah, you're going to have to. This
like
one,
10 o'clock, and it's like, all right, it's your turn to go.
well, when you got to go, you got to go. Forget what time it is.
Well, I mean, I think you got to plan ahead. I mean, you don't want to be the guy, it's like 1:30, and like, I got to go. Oh, no.
Well, Josh, I have worked with you quite a long time. I think when nature calls, you don't have any say.
Most
You
of the
can't
time.
just be like, hey, it's 10 o'clock. I don't want to go right now.
I also try, now, I am not a normal example, but I do
Well,
try
that's what I'm
to-
saying. You have no room to talk about people like, hey, you can't go between when you're the buddy system is for that reason that you could go whenever because your buddies are standing in the line for you. So if you get there at 3 o'clock in the morning, I got news for you. You're gonna have to go to the bathroom between 3 and the time they start talking at 2.
100%.
Yeah. Now, number 4, use the buddy system. There is absolutely zero cell service for the most
Really?
part, it says. So if you have to leave your group, take a friend or have a plan so you do not lose anyone.
How about walkie-talkies?
The old Nextel.
Yeah.
I don't know why that didn't catch on. Like, it caught on, but why did it go away?
I love those things.
Number 5, dress warm. The real feel will be in the teens tomorrow.
Oh, boy.
Number 5.
Which is counter to the other point, which is drink minimally, because now you don't want to drink more because it's cold.
Expect mud. With all the snow and rain, wear shoes that you might be able to throw out if they get ruined or can't be washed. Don't worry about being cute. Trust me, it says.
How about just wear some boots?
Pack a cooler or a backpack. Although it is strongly advised not to drink too much, you will get hangry. Pack sandwiches, snacks, and drinks.
Smart Boy Scout rules.
They are some of the ideas for everybody for tomorrow's parade. All right?
Do you have a favorite one of those rules? Like, is there one that made you like chuckle or smile or like?
Well,
like,
the
yeah,
buddy system one is interesting because you know what happens. There's supposed to be 1 million people there.
Right.
So you're inevitably going to get detached and lost. You're going to get people like trying to find rides home, and there's no buses, no nothing.
Oh,
I heard
boy.
Kevin Hart paid for either bus service or train service to make it free for tomorrow.
That was thoughtful of him.
Yeah. 609 403 0973, Mike Gill Sports Bash. Coming up, the last Eagles Super Bowl parade, John Marks was there. He's now host of Philly with John Marks on the PHLY platform, and he joins me next on the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN. All right, 2:23. I'm Mike Gill, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. What's up, everybody? So I have no interest in going to the parade. Zero. None. I didn't go to the last one. I have no interest, but I get people that want to go. I just read you off all the stipulations and rules. That makes me want to go less. John Marks, at the time the Eagles were Super Bowl champions, I believe, did his show live from the parade. Now, if you're doing your show there, it's probably debauchery. It's probably pretty neat just to see the stuff going on. I don't want to be a bystander just standing there. But John Marks is host of Philly with John Marks on the PHLY YouTube channel, and he is here on a Sports Bash Thursday. John Marks, what's up, buddy?
I was actually in the parade. I was on the top of the bus with the cornerback. Well, maybe it was the running backs. They switched like halfway through the parade, and everybody was on everybody's bus. But yeah, I was in the parade on top of the bus. I had some of the greatest pictures I've ever taken. Yes.
If you're in the parade, that's different. If you're standing on the street just watching the parade, do you have interest in that? Are you going tomorrow?
No, it would take. I think you'd have to pay me $2,500 to go stand in line for that many hours and to watch the parade. I'll watch on TV, Mike. I'm fine. I'm not going, no.
Are you jaded from being at the last one? Because I know people that are like, like Nick Earnshaw, who's does some stuff with us. Yeah. He's going tomorrow at like 4:30 in the morning.
Yeah, $3,000 to go at 4:30 in the morning. No, I mean, Mike, it's funny. We talked, we're about the same age, and we always talked about we want us a parade. We want a parade. We want a parade. Now you have two parades in 8 years, and I remember the Phillies, and I was working with Mike Piscinelli at the time, and I saw the 2008 parade, and I was in the parade. We actually broadcasted. I jumped off the parade off the bus at the art museum, and I ran back and actually missed the Kelsey speech because I was trying to make it through the crowd to get to the Fridays on the Parkway to do our show. Jeez. So I came back, and no one really knew what he said or what he did. So now, I saw that, man. I'm 8 years older. You're 8 years older. I have no interest in dealing with that again.
So who is this team's version of Kelsey? Who steals the show tomorrow?
Landon Dickerson.
You think?
Maybe wearing overalls. They're in the denim overalls or something whacked and weird. He's an interesting guy. I think Mailata has a chance of dropping some F-bombs. Because we had Jordan on, I think it was my last year doing Marks and Reese on WIP, and it was like every other week he was using an S word or an F word or something, where it's like, yo, bro, we have the FCC in the United States. He just it didn't really sink in.
Yeah.
So I think it could be one of the offensive linemen.
John Marks with us, Philly with John Marks, weekday mornings, 8 a.m. So, Marks, you look at the Phillies, the Eagles winning now. 3 times they've been to the Super Bowl. What does this mean for Philadelphia fans? Because you've dealt with them over the years. Everything's got to be negative. We're always looking at the worst. Will this mellow Eagles fans out at all?
Yeah, I think the first Super Bowl, for the most part, made us a little softer, right? But still, we were firing Sirianni after 4 games this year, right? So how much does it actually soften us? I don't know. I remember when the Red Sox won a couple of World Series, and God, they won 4 World Series. They lost their identity, right? They weren't the hateable losers. They weren't the curse of the Bambino. They were actually winners. They didn't know what to do with themselves, right? I feel like we know what to do with ourselves with the Eagles. I was so impressed with the confidence, the quiet confidence of the fan base before the Super Bowl, the week leading up to the Super Bowl. Everybody was pretty much on the same page of, we're a really good team. We're a better team than the Chiefs. I don't know what the rest of the country's looking. They're looking at the reputation of Kansas City. Open up your eyes and look at these two teams. We're the better team. So I feel like Eagles fans really had a good grasp on what this team was this year.
Yeah, it's funny, John, because, it's funny when you mentioned the Red Sox thing. I said when the Cubs won, that kind of hurt baseball because
same thing.
You lost the Red Sox, you lost the Cubs, you lost these mythical stories of the chase. And the Eagles fans, kind of the same. It was for years, we're the only team that doesn't have one. Now you have 2, and it's like, man, we're really good. It's like, how do you come to terms with the fact that not only did you get one, you have 2, you were at another one, and people are looking at you as the most well-run organization in sports. It's almost like, I don't know how to deal with this for the fans out there.
It's weird, man. It is. It's weird. It's still when I see people 4:30 in the morning at Wawa this morning. I got a guy like looking at me, and I'm like, bro, listen, I don't know what to say. Like
Right?
I'm as shocked as anybody. There was one point in the game, like you probably had the same thought. It's 34-0 in the Super Bowl against the two-time defending Chiefs. And I looked at my wife and I said, is this really happening right now?
Yeah.
Because the Eagles aren't supposed to be up 34-0 in a Super Bowl in the second half against the Chiefs, right? But I mean, get used to it. Get used to it, Eagles fans, because this is what this organization is. That's what this team is right now.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I was in Clearwater actually on Sunday watching the game. So I'm down there, and it's like me and a guy my age, and then like his son and like a younger group. And the younger guys, like everyone's like different, but like we're just kind of like, I can't believe this game is over. Like the game is over. It's almost not enjoyable. You wanted a better game. And the young guys are just like, every touchdown, they're going nuts. And we're kind of like, oh, man, this is kind of anticlimactic. But, hey, guess what? That's kind of the state where this team was. How did it get here, John Marks? Because, throughout the course of the years, you got the ups and downs. They didn't have these dominating performances throughout the course of the year. And then, bam, they just ambushed the last two teams.
Well, I remember a lot of people said this. They haven't played their best game yet. It's kind of like these cliche throwaway lines or whatever. But I think what we learned about this Eagles team is they didn't play their best game until the NFC Championship game and the Super Bowl. When you think about it in the Super Bowl, what got them there, which was Saquon Barkley, the Chiefs did a great job bottling up Saquon Barkley. But one thing that the Eagles did very, very well in the Super Bowl, and I'll give Kellen Moore a lot of credit for this, even though it wasn't working, he didn't go away from Saquon Barkley. So the Chiefs couldn't stop defending it. They were so scared of Saquon because we know this. Home run hitters hit home runs on any given carry. And we've seen that with Saquon all year long. So they still had to be there worrying about the Saquon run, and it opened up everything for everybody else. So it felt like the theme to this Eagles team was, all right, but Jalen Hurts has got to be able to beat you in the big game. Can he do it with his arm? And he did it with his arm. His two best games of the season, arguably, were the Super Bowl and the NFC Championship game.
Yeah, man. And, for years, it's funny, Nick Foles is like the polarizing guy. Some people want his jersey retired. He has a statue outside. But this organization now belongs to Jalen Hurts. There's really and Nick Sirianni. Who would have ever thought that Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts would be the quarterback-coach combination that would get this done? And it's such a young age for both of those guys.
Yeah, it's Jalen's 26, has already been to 2 Super Bowls, won a Super Bowl, has outplayed a guy that a lot of people consider the future GOAT in Pat Mahomes. He's outplayed him in both Super Bowls.
Unbelievable.
You have a defense that is young and unbelievably talented. You have an offense that's a little bit older but is stacked and ready to go. You have an owner that pays out a lot of money to ensure that he can have all the best players. And you have a general manager that is so far ahead of the rest of the league. It's like Howie Roseman isn't doing anything special, but I think what this Super Bowl showed a lot of these organizations, and you're seeing a lot of this right now, like Joe Burrow came out and said, hey, the Eagles pay everybody. Why can't I have T. Higgins too?
Yeah.
And then you look and you see what the Eagles are doing. They're just paying everybody in bonuses up front, so they can cook the contracts and they can just schedule them. They can kick the can down the line. And
so that's a Jeffrey Lurie that gets a lot of credit because he's willing to put the cash up front, where a guy like Mike Brown says, "I ain't giving you $8 million lump sum."
You read the same thing I did. So Joe Burrow's saying, hey, how come we can't re-sign T. Higgins? The problem with the Bengals is they don't want to put everything up front. They want to actually pay these guys every week. So every week they want to give them this big paycheck, as opposed to Jeffrey Lurie saying, here's $100 million. This is yours. Because these teams want to keep the money and want to keep it in the bank, earning interest. Even a guy like Jerry Jones. Jerry Jones doesn't want to pay everything out because that's not the way they do business.
Right.
He wants to pay players like NFL owners has traditionally paid players. Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman have figured out how to buck the system, and now everybody around the NFL is looking at it and saying, like Cowboys fans and Cowboys media are being like, hang on a second. How do they have every player on their team making $20 million, $15 million? And Jerry's crying cap poor. It's because Jeffrey Lurie pays everybody and he does it up front.
Absolutely. John Marks, Philly with John Marks, weekday mornings, 8 a.m. He's on the Sports Bash right now. When you were talking to the Philly fans every single day, I want to get the pulse of, I remember here, Howie Roseman was public enemy number 1, and there wasn't even a number 2. It was such a wide gap. of how much this guy was hated. For where he was and to where he is now, it's unbelievable. The change in events of the thought, the perception of that guy.
You think about it.
Do you
highs
agree
and
with
lows,
that?
right?
Do you agree with that?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Chip Kelly sent him to the basement, right? You don't hear from him for 2 years. He emerges, comes back upstairs, and he didn't just luck into winning that first Super Bowl. His fingerprints were all over it. He made some fantastic moves that got them to that spot, right?
Well, let me ask you this, because I had people that were saying it wasn't Howie, it was Joe Douglas.
Nah, stop. I never bought that.
I agree with you. First of all, I was never a Howie hater. I was always a Howie supporter. But I had a lot of people calling in here, texting in here.
Oh, sure.
It's Joe Douglas, and Howie has nothing to do with it.
Well, it's because Joe Douglas looks like he should have a pencil in his ear, and Howie Roseman looks like he should have a calculator in his pocket, right? I think what we've learned about Howie Roseman, the NFL GM, basketball has these young analytic guys. Baseball has these analytic guys. Football is still the one sport where you're supposed to be, grunting and wearing sweatpants and have a pencil in your ear. And Howie Roseman has proven that doesn't have to be what your NFL GM is. But one thing that with Howie that is very impressive, and I have a story for you. So when I worked at WIP, our studio, the window overlooked the Schuylkill River and then the Schuylkill Expressway. Someone had spray painted a sign, a big piece of wood, and it said "Fire Howie" in orange, and somehow maneuvered it between two levels of the Schuylkill where we could see it. They intentionally put it there so someone at WIP could see it. I looked outside and I said, "Does that say Howie?" I was the first one to notice it. I took a picture and I tweeted it. And sure as hell, it said "Fire Howie." And the guy called in Angelo in the morning and said, "Yeah, that was me." I had a Howie Roseman Appreciation Day at the end of the first year of Nick Sirianni, where they went to the playoffs before they lost to the Bucs. I said, I better have a Howie Roseman Appreciation Day now because they're going to lose to the Bucs, right? And I did. And people were so mad. And I was halfway doing it to troll people to have fun. But I was legitimately saying, like, hey, this guy is a Super Bowl winning GM, and look where we are right now. He is already building another winner. People didn't appreciate it. If people bail off of Howie Roseman at this point, we're the biggest fair weather fans out there because this dude is a future Hall of Famer.
Yeah,
and he's the best executive this city's ever seen. And
no doubt.
If you can get over the fact that he's not, he didn't play defensive tackle in high school, then you're probably going to be okay with him as a GM.
Well, we're already seeing the Eagles are having their locker cleanouts today. Milton Williams is at his locker, says he wants to return, but obviously I want a raise. 3 days later, and everybody, the band's already broken up. Kellen Moore's in New Orleans. Guys want raises. Howie Roseman's got to be the guy that keeps this thing together because that's how you become special. You win a Super Bowl, you're special, but to get back-to-back, that's how you become memorable.
Yeah, it's how you become special. You're right. It's going to be difficult. Bond, Williams, Josh Sweat, guys that were big parts of the success of that defense. Milton Williams, I'm curious to see just how much value he has because teams are going to be very interested. Are we talking about $20 million a year? I mean, the offensive guards make $20 million a year these days, Mike Gill. So a guy like Milton Williams, you're betting on what you saw, and he's going to get better. You're betting on that he is going to emerge into being a Pro Bowl player. I don't know if the Eagles touch him if he's making $20+ million a year, and I don't even know if that's a viable number to put out there. But I'll say this. I'd rather have Williams than Sweat because I think Williams and Jalen Carter, the push up the middle, will make it a lot easier for any defensive end that you put out there. I mean, really, like when you think of defenses and you think of sacks, you think about the ends. But I look at this team, and I see the defensive tackles really being the heartbeat of that line.
No doubt. And Milton Williams, he bet on himself. He didn't take one of those extensions, and he's hitting the free agency at like 26 years old. So he's saying, I really want to cash in. Where you get some of these other guys, Bond's going to be interesting. The last time they had a good linebacker, TJ Edwards, he got like $8 million, and the Eagles said, too much for me. Head on out to Chicago. He's probably going to get, would you imagine he gets more than an $8 million offer from somebody? Bond?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he's not an edge linebacker, so he's not going to get the big bucks. In today's NFL, the off the ball linebackers don't get paid like the edge rushers do. But I'll tell you this: the impact is not deniable, right? Like,
no doubt.
You may have to pay him more money than you want to in year one and year two, but the impact he had on the defense, the playmaking he had on the defense, how active he was in the running game and the passing game, the edge that he brought the team, he really did. I don't know how you let him leave. Listen, if somebody's going to give him a ridiculous offer, I understand the Eagles not matching. I remember when Hargrave went to San Francisco, I wanted them to keep Hargrave. The 49ers made too big of an offer, and that didn't end up paying off. He was good the first year or two, but then he's been injured, and now he's gone. So Williams, it makes sense. Vaughn, it makes sense. With Sweat, I think Sweat is going to be the guy that leaves. Defensive ends have value. He's a good defensive end that can get to the quarterback. I feel like he's going to price himself out, but then you have to replace him because you don't have a lot of ends on the roster.
Yeah, Jalix Hunt's interesting. He was a third-round pick. Does that mean Brandon Graham comes back again and plays like a little part-time role? His show is called Philly with John Marks, weekday mornings, 8 a.m. There were signature moments of that first one. The Philly special, the strip sack, Jake Elliott's 61-yarder. There were so many memorable moments of that one. What's the most memorable moment? What will you remember about this Super Bowl team?
Because you're right. There are a couple singular moments, but it was just such a domination. I think what you'll take away from this game is the utter domination, the Eagles defense, and it happened quick. Just the one visual that comes to my mind is when they were showing the Chiefs sideline, and they all knew. They were like, they didn't even know what they hit him. The offensive line knew. Pat Mahomes knew. The receivers knew. They had the look on their face, oh, my God, we're going to lose this game. What can we do? We need to salvage it right now. And there was nothing that they could do right there.
The guy said last night, did you watch the mic'd up?
I did not.
All right, so the one guy, I don't remember who it was, but he just looked at the guy next to him. He goes, they just won't stop attacking. They're just relentlessly coming after.
Relentless.
Yep.
Yeah, they're relentless. They were like that all year. But, we should have seen it coming. That offensive line was having troubles towards the end of the season. The Kansas City offensive line was having problems. That's not a good matchup. But the fact that we're able to get pressure from three, they were getting sacks with a 3-man rush and then a 4-man rush without blitzing at all is truly amazing. I guess Cooper DeJean, the exciting whites, all to say he takes back a pick six and people are like, who's this dude? And then you realize that Howie hit on his first and his second round draft pick and they're both studs.
Yeah.
Right? The double punch from Jalen Carter on the Milton Williams strip sack, where he just knocked Pat Mahomes' head off and didn't get called a penalty, is another one. And then I guess
see the movie 3 O'clock High?
Oh, to Richard. What's it? Tyson's his last name. Richard Tyson.
Yeah, I liken that moment to 3 O'clock High, where Buddy Revell, the football guy, puts his finger on his chest and he just breaks it in half and then smashes him up against the car. That was basically Jalen Carter, like, you used to be the bully here, now I'm the guy, and that was the moment. You're right. When they smash, he fumbles, he's all over, and they want the call too, and it's like, nope, you're not getting it anymore.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. When you look at a great defense, you need a bunch of different types of players on the defense, right? And Jalen Carter is the guy that has ultimate edge. He's going to get in trouble sometimes. He's going to get fined. He's probably going to get penalties. He might get into a fight with his coach on the sideline, like we saw. All that's fine because he's a total maniac on the field, and you see that, man. He is as good as a young Jerome Brown or a player like that. And we were young when those guys were playing, but he is as talented as any Eagles defensive player that has come in a really, really long time.
Yep, you got gray in your beard. I got gray in my beard. That's when Jerome Brown and Reggie White and Clyde Simmons were playing. Now the new guys are here. Check them out tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. Philly with John Marks on the PHLY YouTube channel. And, of course, he was kind enough to join me right here on the Sports Bash. Johnny Marks, thanks, buddy.
My man. Thanks, Mike.
All right, there's John Marks here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. Coming up on the other side, we got those footballs for you, a commemorative item that Eagle fans won't want to miss. That's next. 247 Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. Thanks to John Marks. Check out his show, Philly Philly, with John Marks, 8 a.m. on the PHLY YouTube channel. I'm Mike Gill. The parade tomorrow, you might want something to remember this Super Bowl season, and I think we have the perfect item for you. Bob Ibach is back with us right now to tell all our listeners give them another opportunity to cash in on an awesome Eagles memorabilia piece to remember this Super Bowl 59 victory. And Bob, I was back in my office earlier today. I was looking at my Phillies baseballs and the Super Bowl balls from a couple of years ago. Man, these things are just such a perfect item, but there are limited numbers.
Yes, you are, Mike. It's a pleasure to be with you again today. And, I've been around sports quite a long time, and I've seen some great Super Bowls. I think it's up to 17 that I actually attended when I was a sports writer with the Baltimore Sun and the Washington Post years ago. And but this is amazing. I mean, Philadelphia, I worked there for 3 years as a sports editor, one of the most amazing cities with all the hoopla, all the passion. And I know there's passion for this team. We're talking about this special limited edition football, and it is a special item because only 5,000 of these will ever be made. I checked in with Nyko Sports. We're down to like less than 1,000, so we're in the red zone, so to speak, and driving for the goal line to see if we can sell this out, raise more monies for the Eagles Autism Foundation, which is a charity of choice for the Philadelphia Eagles. The footballs that I'll be describing, then I'll give out a toll-free number on the website how you can get these for $129.95. It is a real good deal because this is an officially licensed Super Bowl football. You won't find these anywhere else, not being sold anywhere. Only 5,000 of them will be made, all handmade. Everything on the various panels is embossed, so it'll keep it fresh looking for years to come. It's almost like engraving things into the side of the panel, so it really makes it nice. You'll get an individually numbered certificate of authenticity, and on the top panel we'll have that Super Bowl 59 official logo in Roman numerals, some stadium history, championship history of the Eagles, listing all their championships going all the way back to 1948 when they won the NFL championship for the first time. The second panel right below that is a recap of the season this year. The 2004 season schedule's there with the opponents, dates, and scores of every Birds game right there on that schedule, so you'll be able to look back and see exactly how the season unfolded leading up, going down to the championship game, which they won 40-22, of course, down in New Orleans against Kansas City. And that last panel's very special as well because we have an action image of Jalen Hurts, who was the MVP of the Super Bowl, and right next to him is his main guy, Mr. Barkley, with his stats, amazing season he had, and really, I think, was the difference in this Eagles team from the last couple of years. He added that extra spark, along with a great defense. I mean, that front line, I've seen a lot of football, and it probably goes back. Somebody asked me the other day, is that the best defensive line you've seen? I'd said at least the best since the 85 Bears of Mike Ditka. That was a fabulous team as well defensively. So here's how you can go ahead and celebrate and get this one-of-a-kind football. But I want to caution people, there's only less than 1,000 of these left. So you better do it soon because I think by the end of the parade tomorrow, they'll all be gone. The toll-free number to call is 1-800-345-2868. That's 1-800-345-2868, or go right to the website. You can order it there. You can see the football at NIKOsports.com. It's spelled Nikco sports.com, Nikco sports.com, or 800-345-2868. And Mike, in closing, somebody said, well, how long are these going to take to get to you? Usually 6 to 8 weeks because they're all handmade, but you can go to the website, you can download a gift flyer instantly with a picture of the football, and you can use it for Valentine's Day gift tomorrow. So, I mean, you can do this so many different ways, so you don't have to wait for it to come. You can give to that person, and they will know that this one-of-a-kind football is going to come. And I guarantee you, they come into your house or your home, put this thing on display, they're going to say, wow, where did you get that? And they're not going to be able to get it because they're going to all be sold out come Saturday.
Bob, it's a tremendous item. I have them back in my office from the previous Super Bowl. They just stand out in there. And obviously, the people out there, you're running out of time. 800-345-2868 is the number if you want to make sure you get the biggest Eagles fan you know or the biggest Eagles fan in your family. Or as Bob said, a little Valentine's Day gift. Because you see so many people now, families, husbands, wife, traveling together. Get those footballs, 800-345-2868. It's awesome, Bob. We appreciate it as always.
Well, Mike, I want to thank you and your audience and your. We've raised over $3.3 million in recent years for various charities, and I know working with the Eagles Autism Foundation on this, we're going to get a lot more things done for good causes, and we couldn't get it done without your support. So a big thank you to all your great listeners and yourself and your staff there.
All right, Bob Ibach, and all the proceeds, or some of the proceeds, I should say, for each football, a portion of each football sold will be donated to the Eagles Autism Foundation. And Bob, of course, whenever Bob's on the line, that means something good happened. We had the World Series balls. We had the Eagles footballs from a couple of years ago. And these ones, I have the picture here in front of me. And if you're watching on the YouTube channel, you can see a picture of those unbelievable footballs right there on the YouTube at Mike Gill Show. We'll keep that up on the screen for you. Those footballs are right there for the people watching over at Mike Gill Show on the X platform and on YouTube. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. Coming up, you heard him earlier this afternoon on Joe and Q here on 97.3 ESPN. It's Q Myers joining me next as we get ready to take a look at the Eagles, the offseason, the perception of this team now nationally, and more with Q Myers next on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. I want to thank John Marks for jumping on board, Bob Ibach as well, who joined me here on the Sports Bash with those great footballs. But when we return, Q Myers weighs in on the Eagles. Last year, Q Myers says something was going on in that locker room. How did they fix it? We'll get that coming up next, plus some NFL news notes. Does he think Kellen Moore will succeed in New Orleans? We got all that on the way with ESPN Radio's Q Myers from Joe and Q on 97.3 ESPN. Just after 3, Sports Bash on a Thursday. I'm Mike Gill. We're brought to you this hour by Broadleaf's Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning, your trusted source for heating and plumbing service installation for generations. 609-390-3907 online, broadleafs.net. So much to dive into on today's show. The Eagles win Super Bowl 59. How did they get it done? Q Myers from Joe and Q, weekdays at noon on 97.3 ESPN. You know, last year we had Q Myers on at Radio Row, and he believed that there was something going on in the locker room, that the Eagles basically crapped out last year, went 1-6 down the stretch. What changed for this organization? What changed, and what is the perception now of the Philadelphia Eagles? We welcome in to the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN, the host of Joe and Q, Q Myers here on 97.3 ESPN. All right, Q, what's up, buddy?
Man, chilling. How you doing, man? How was your trip back from New Orleans? It was great seeing you out there.
It was all good, man. I flew from New Orleans to Tampa, spent the weekend there. You know, it was nice and warm, and then it snowed here when I got home.
Hey, you know what? It snowed there, but you're talking about a championship, so there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, man. I got to see the Super Bowl in the pool, and now I get to celebrate it in the snow. You were pretty adamant last year that you thought there was something in the locker room that caused the basically, nosedive of what was a successful start to the season. They were 10-1, and then completely the bottom fell out. How did it get to what we saw Sunday night? Total domination of a 15-2 back-to-back Super Bowl championship team.
You know, I think that Nick Sirianni needs to get a lot of credit, and I don't know if he gets the credit that he deserves, but I think that he did a really good job of self-awareness, understood what went wrong, and I still to this day believe that something went on in that locker room that we don't have the answer to, but there's something that's got to explain how they went from 10-1 to that ultimate collapse that they had. But they were able to come back this year. He brings in Vic Fangio to be the defensive coordinator, hires Kellen Moore to be the middleman, really the go-between between him and Jalen Hurts, and also allows Jalen Hurts to do what he does best. Obviously, the acquisition of Saquon Barkley was huge, but I just think that they did a whole team self-check. And, okay, this is what's going on. This is what happened. This is how we're going to eliminate it. And we're going to get back to playing Eagles football. They went from being, the 30th ranked, 31st ranked defense to number 1, and it showed in a major way on Sunday. So now the funny thing, Mike, is so many teams across the league. I mean, locally in Las Vegas, I've been talking about it with Raider Nation. Everyone wants to build a monster like Howie Roseman built there in Philadelphia to knock off the Chiefs. Obviously, the Raiders have to face the Chiefs twice a year. So everyone now is like, see, that's the blueprint. See, that's the blueprint. That's how you got to go after and get it. Yeah, that's easy said than done, right? Because Howie Roseman's done a fantastic job draft after draft after draft building in the trenches.
Yeah, it's funny because he got criticized so much for his draft failures.
Yeah.
There was a time where he was public enemy number 1 here. People wanted him gone and out. The Eagles stuck with him. And I think, when we look at football, you guys were playing the audio of Joe Burrow earlier. He's like, why can't we do what the Eagles did? That's where the owner, we don't look at owners all the time in their role. But Jeffrey Lurie will spend the money up front. Hey, you want a signing bonus? I'll pay $9 million up front so that we don't have to, the cap. Jerry Jones isn't willing to do that. Mike Brown is not willing to take a lump sum of money out of his pocket up front. That's how the Eagles can manipulate the cap.
Right. That's something that Joe was really leaning into, Joe Fortenbaugh, and he was talking about the fact that the Eagles, not only did they pay their guys, but they pay them early, right? They gave them their signing bonus, but they paid them before they had to, where Jerry Jones, we saw him drag his feet up until week 1 before he got the deal done with Dak Prescott. We saw him drag his feet, all the way almost up to week 1 with CeeDee Lamb. And of course, in Cincinnati, I mean, they've got at least 3 dudes that need to get paid, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, and Trey Hendrickson. Like, are you going to pay them all? I think T. Higgins, there's no doubt about it that he's going to walk, but what are you going to pay Jamar? What are you going to pay Trey? And how much is that going to hit your salary cap? So the Eagles have done it the right way. Now everyone wants to be them. Like you said, Joe Burrow played that sound of him saying, well, the Eagles are doing it. Why can't we? It looks good and it sounds good, but everyone can't do exactly what Philadelphia's done because this is not just an overnight thing. They've been doing this for a while to be able to be where they are right now as Super Bowl champs.
Q Myers, host of Joe and Q on ESPN Radio, 97.3 ESPN. And Q, it's, hand in hand, it's the patience, too. Most teams, when the GM makes a mistake, they're on thin ice. And you make another mistake, you're gone. So many teams are unwilling to have patience with the guy that at one time they believed in.
Right, exactly. And so, again, Philadelphia has found a way to put it together and make it work, right? And I just think that it works so well with the cast of characters they have. Like Nick Sirianni, he's not a guy. Chris Canty on Unsportsmanlike said that he's not a top 5 coach. Guess what? He doesn't have to be, right? But he's the right guy for Philadelphia. He's that right guy, even though all season long, up until, late in the season, we were all saying he was coaching for his job. He's the right guy for that job. He's the right guy for Philadelphia. Jalen Hurts is not necessarily a top 5 quarterback. He's the right quarterback for Philadelphia. He, to me, embraces everything that Philadelphia is all about. And he's a guy that I liked a lot coming out of college. I thought that the Raiders should draft him. Clearly they didn't. But he is one of those guys that, he's been doubted. He's been slighted. He's had 18 different offensive coordinators now. Now that Kellen Moore's leaving, it's another offensive coordinator that's going to come in. And somehow he finds a way to keep on making it work with his work ethic. The guy that he is, obviously being a coach's son, we hear that all the time. He just knows how to overcome adversity. And again, I think that really embodies and embraces who Philadelphia as a community and a city really are.
Yeah, let's look at Jalen Hurts. One of our viewers sent this, and last night, if you watched the Mic'd Up segment, he says, I love how Jalen Hurts seemed to have the same feeling about assuming it wasn't over until the clock runs out. He said, quote, the last one changed my soul. And he mentioned as he sat on the bench the last time watching the red confetti, my girlfriend asked me last night, what happens to the red confetti? The green fell down this time. Where does all the red confetti go? Well, who cares? The Eagles win the Super Bowl. But Jalen Hurts, the maturation of him we heard so much about him as the coach's son, the leader, but there was always a story that he seemed to be going after. Now that he's got it, where do we have Hurts? You just kind of, people keep asking, where do you put Hurts? I said, is he top 5? I don't know. Is he top 10? I'm not sure. Is he bottom 20? Maybe. But he's the number 1 winner in football. So what does that mean for this organization and Jalen Hurts?
Right. It means that they've got the right guy. It really does. And they invested in the right guy, and they knew when they drafted him in the second round, he had something special about him. And that's why, Mike, I was pounding the table for the Raiders to go get him, because I saw a guy overcome adversity at Alabama. This guy got benched. He got benched for Tua, right? And instead of saying, well, get me out of here, transfer me right now, I'm not going to play, he was ready. He was prepared. He did not pout. He just sat there and was ready when called upon. And guess what? They needed him to come back into action. He was ready to be that guy. He was. Then he transfers to Oklahoma. He ends up winning there. He goes on to be a Heisman Trophy finalist. He didn't win it, but he was there in New York, showing that he can go from being in Alabama in their system to Oklahoma, adapting to a whole nother system, and then not being a first-round pick, right? I thought that the Raiders, who had 2 picks in the first round that year in 2020, number 20 overall, they should have drafted Jalen Hurts. They would have had 5 years. He could have sat behind Derek Carr. When they were ready to move on from him, Jalen Hurts could slide in. Guess what? I wasn't the only one with that idea. The Eagles had that idea. They had Carson Wentz, a guy who was in the MVP conversation, who helped them get to the playoffs before they ultimately won a Super Bowl with Nick Foles. And they said, yep, we're going to go get that guy and sit him behind Wentz. And sooner than you knew it, he was in the starting lineup. And look where we are today.
It's funny because if you remember, Nick Foles won the Super Bowl as the backup. The Eagles invested a lot of money into the backup quarterback position.
Yep.
Hurts was drafted to be a low-cost backup originally because they had Wentz. Little did they know that drafting Hurts was going to cause Wentz to go off the rails a little bit, and they had the ultimate insurance policy with a guy like Jalen Hurts. You look at Nick Sirianni. You mentioned Canty. I had him on. I mean, he just seems to not appreciate the style of coach. But if you watched the Mic'd Up last night, I think a lot of people would watch him and say, this guy's a head coach in the NFL. He's running up the sideline. He looks like one of the towel wavers, but he's the head coach of the Super Bowl champions. His role, in your mind, watching this team, you said it, you got to give him some credit, but it seems that people have a lot of questions about his role with this team.
He's the CEO. He's the CEO. He's the ultimate motivator. He's the guy that keeps it together. He's the glue that keeps it all together, even though he's not calling plays, even though he's not, some defensive guru and the offensive whiz kid like we see with like a Sean McVay or a Kyle Shanahan, or he's not Aaron Glenn, who's now in New York with the Jets as their head coach after coming off a really good defensive performance. He's just Nick Sirianni, right? And look, it's so funny. We get a lot of these coaches in the league and we say, oh, they come from the Sean McVay tree, or they come from the Andy Reid tree, or they come, where Nick Sirianni comes from? You know where he was started? He was in D3 football at Mount Union. Right? He was a defensive backs coach at Mount Union, D3 football. By the way, Mount Union's a really good program, right? Covered them when I was in Central Texas, and UMHB was going up against them all time in and time out for championships in D3 football. But that's where he got his start from. So I go back to that's why he's perfect for Philadelphia. What does Philadelphia embrace? Hard work, blue collar, grind it out, underdogs, underappreciated, always have a chip on the shoulder, right? The city of brotherly love that's not really that friendly, right? I mean, it's just, that's what it is. That is Nick Sirianni to a T, and that's why he's the perfect guy for the job in Philadelphia.
Hey, man, I met you in the city of brotherly love, and I let my heart out to you.
Hey, man, and we have been brothers ever since.
Q Myers, Joe and Q, you can hear them weekdays right here, noon to 2 on 97.3 ESPN. Yeah, I mean, and you go back to that draft, they drafted Derek Barnett. Patrick Mahomes was drafted by Kansas City. On that night in Philadelphia is when the Reid-Mahomes tandem became something. And it's funny, I was joking, I think it might have been with you last week. I said, if Reid doesn't get fired by the Eagles, maybe Patrick Mahomes is the Eagles quarterback, right?
Right, exactly. And, the funny thing about that is you want to talk about, showing brotherly love. That's when my heart dropped. The minute that Kansas City traded up to go get Patrick Mahomes, standing right next to you at the bottom of the Rocky steps there at the draft, I knew immediately. I dropped my head and knew immediately what they and who they were going to go draft, and knew that he was going to terrorize the AFC West for years to come. Now, I didn't know he was going to be as good as he is. I didn't know he was going to be that good. I don't want to pat myself on the back like that. But, man, that dude has been all that and then some. And, yeah, if the Philadelphia Eagles had not got rid of Andy Reid, he very well could end up in Philadelphia. Who knows?
All right, Q. You looked at those two teams, you saw the blowout.
Yeah.
But who's more likely to rebound and get back?
That's, I think Philadelphia. Honestly, if you look at Kansas City and the way they're set up right now, they're due to take a step back. Look how many one-score games they won this past year, right? That doesn't work all the time. That evens out eventually. The number game catches up to you. They won, 7 or 8 one-score games? So they're not going to win that many one-score games in 2025. It's just not going to happen. They had things happen that just don't happen. Blocked field goal here, a fumbled snap here by Aiden O'Connell. Like, they had so many things work out in their fashion, in their favor when the ball bounced their direction. That's not going to happen next year. Oh, by the way, they were super healthy this year, right? So that's not going to consistently happen. I mean, it just doesn't work out that way. Again, it's a numbers game. It catches up to you eventually. And so I think that they take a step back. They don't have a ton of cap space to work with. They also have an offensive line that, as you know, is not what it needs to be, because those bloodthirsty Pirates that are the Philadelphia Eagles got after him early and often without blitzing one time. So they need to address that. They've got to replace just Jags with real dudes like Juju Smith-Schuster. Okay, the cat's out of the bag. He's not that great, right? DeAndre Hopkins, he's not the D-Hop that he once was, right? I mean, you got Xavier Worthy. He's a really good player. But, I mean, outside of that, how many real deal weapons do they have? Rashee Rice is going to come back. Okay, cool. But they need to retool. Travis Kelce looks old and slow. He looks like he needs to be on tour now with Taylor Swift as opposed to being on the gridiron. So, I mean, I think that they're going to take a step back. So I'd say Philadelphia has the best chance to make another run at it.
Yeah, a couple free agent decisions. We'll see for Philadelphia. They win Super Bowl 59. Last week, you talked to so many people, I'm sure, on the national show, the local show, getting ready for this game. Was there anything that stood out that made you feel Philadelphia is the better team and will win this game?
No, it's funny. Everybody I talked with, and even just in my mind, I was like, Philadelphia is better. They're the better team. They on paper, they're the better team, but we know that you don't win games on paper. So I kept saying, as much as I believe Philadelphia is better, I still think there's the Patrick Mahomes factor. I still think there's the Andy Reid factor, and we have to watch out for that. Mike, if you had told me there was going to be a blowout, if you were going to tell me it was going to be 24-0 at halftime, I would have called you a liar. And I got a lot of respect for you, but I'd have been like, come on, Mike. I understand.
Well,
right?
2 years ago, I thought the Eagles had the better team, and they
did.
lost that game. And they lost that game 38-35, and I thought the Eagles had the better team again, but I didn't think this Chiefs team was as good as the one 2 years ago.
Right, and you're right. And it's funny, but it's the Chiefs factor. They find ways to win games, so I thought that was going to happen. I honestly kept waiting for the Kansas City Chiefs to flip the switch. Like, I just kept waiting, like, okay, it's coming. It's coming, right? Even though Cooper DeJean had already taken one back to the house. It was, 17-0. Then it was 24-0 at halftime. It wasn't until the first drive in the third quarter when Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs did nothing and Jalen Hurts hits Devontae Smith with the dagger that I thought the game was over. It took me that long to believe that the game was over, and at that point it was 31-0. That's how much respect I have for the Chiefs and their ability to find ways to get back in the game.
Q Myers is with me here on the Sports Best. So I want to get your take on this. Amon-Ra St. Brown insinuated that he wants to face the Eagles on opening night. Quote, well, we'll play it for you now. Here's what Amon-Ra St. Brown said on his podcast.
I feel like, and you can really see what would happen in the NFC Championship. Not really, but like,
with a healthy defense.
Yeah,
their team's not going to change much. I mean, it might change a little,
but your team wasn't healthy. That's the thing. That's part of the game. Like, you need.
But I'm saying you would see what like our healthy defense how that.
All right, so he says at the end there, you would see what would have happened in the NFC Championship game with a healthy defense and how that bleep operates. He's insinuating that the Lions would have beat the Eagles. Do you think a healthy Lions team was better than this Philadelphia team?
I'm not saying that they were better, but I would have loved to see what it would look like, right? So when he says that, sign me up. I'd love to see that as well. I'd like to see those two battle each other. I hate the fact that the Lions were as banged up as they were. And honestly, there was a certain point in the season where I thought, and I said, I think that they're too banged up to finish the deal, to seal the deal. I just don't think they can do it. Philadelphia has the talent. Philadelphia has the defense. Philadelphia has the health, right? I think Brandon Graham was the one guy that everyone's concerned about, and he made it back. So that was my big concern with Detroit. I love the Detroit story. I would like to see a healthy Detroit going up against a healthy Philadelphia just to see what it looks like. But make no mistake about it, both teams are top-notch. So, like I said, sign me up. I don't need any of these fluff games. Give me that one right out the jump. I'll take it.
They're the options. It's the Lions and this NFC Championship game that never was, an NFC Championship rematch between the Commanders and Eagles. You got the Bears. Some people are throwing because you got Ben Johnson with Caleb Williams. It's Chicago and Philadelphia. You got Denver. The Raiders are at home in Philly or in Philly this year with Pete Carroll. Chip Kelly going back to Philadelphia. There you go. And there's the Rams. The Rams who gave them the best game in the playoffs.
Yeah. No, give me Detroit. Give me Detroit. Just go. I don't need the Commanders because, Eagles are going to play the Commanders twice a year. We get that. It's a division rival game. We get that. No, just give me Detroit out the jump, man. That you want to get, and they did that this year, right? They had Baltimore and Kansas City for that Thursday night game start the season off. That was fantastic. That was great. I don't need a Eagles team and like the Raiders. I don't need that. The Raiders aren't on their level, right? Don't do that. Give me a game that's really good. Give me a juicy game. I'm gonna watch anyway. I mean, I would have watched, me against anybody. Like I'm sick like that, but it's cool. But give me one that's juicy, man. Give me that Eagle and give me that Lions game out the jump. That'll start the 20 for 25 season off right.
All right, Q Myers, let's quickly hit on a couple of NFL stories that we're going to be looking at this offseason. Number one will be Eagles. Kellen Moore, Saints, good fit. Do you like it?
Not necessarily, but I think Kellen Moore didn't have any option. He had to strike while the iron was hot. I think he had kind of cooled off a little bit since his time in Dallas. He went to L.A. with the Chargers and didn't do a whole lot, so I didn't think that he was going to be back in that conversation as a head coach. His stock is obviously at its highest right now with Philadelphia, so I think that he really didn't have any choice. I'm actually surprised that he's not the Cowboys head coach and he took the Saints job, but that's the last job that was remaining, and he wants to be a head coach. So,
did Jerry just not want to wait?
I don't know. I don't get that. That was Jerry's guy, right? I mean, he even made Mike McCarthy keep him on staff when he hired McCarthy. That's what blows my mind, that he decided to go away from him. Like Brian Schottenheimer, he never even called plays for the Cowboys. So that blew my mind. I don't know if he didn't want to wait. I don't know if he's holding it against him that he was an Eagle. I don't know. It just doesn't make any sense.
All right. The Jets have told Aaron Rodgers, thanks, but no thanks.
Deuces.
Where will he land?
Man, that's a great question. We were debating that earlier today on the show. Pittsburgh sounds like a spot, but Mike Tomlin, is he going to deal with Aaron Rodgers' mess? I've had people throw out the Raiders, but is Pete Carroll going to want to deal with Aaron Rodgers' mess? Like every place that he could land is, do they want to deal with Aaron Rodgers' mess? Does he stay in New York? Does he end up with the Giants? I mean, like what is going on? I don't know where he's at. His numbers weren't awful, but do you want to deal with Aaron Rodgers? Is the juice worth the squeeze? And to me, Mike, the juice is not worth the squeeze.
What about Joe Burrow, who could alter his deal? Will he finish his career in Cincinnati? We're looking at possibly a split between Burrow and the Bengals.
Yeah, no way. No way. That's the best thing they've had going on in Cincinnati in a long time. They better hold on to Joe Burrow, right? Every team that needs a quarterback would be lined up. When I say that, we just saw Luka get traded from the Mavs to the Lakers, but no, I don't think that Joe Burrow's going anywhere. He will restructure his contract, that $55 million, and obviously the salary cap hit. They've got to do a lot of work to get players under contract so they can field a good team. But no, Joe Burrow ain't going nowhere.
I don't know, man. He could sour. He sounded like today, why can't you guys spend money like the Eagles? You could be, forcing him to make a decision somewhere down the line. We shall see. You mentioned Kelce. Travis Kelce taking time. He'll decide on his playing future. Have we seen the last of Travis Kelce?
I think so. I don't think he has anything to prove. I know he doesn't have anything to prove. One of the best tight ends to ever do it. He just looked really slow in that Super Bowl. I know that he didn't have the phenomenal season that he's used to, but he still did really well for him and his age. I just think that we've seen enough, and I think that he's probably had enough. He can go on tour with Taylor Swift and be good to go. Like I said, he has nothing to prove at this stage of the game. It just seems like it's time for him to hang it up.
Yeah, he looked. You're right. He looked a little slow. And by the way, if you noticed during the mic'd up last night, Mahomes went to everybody. We'll be back. We'll be back. We'll be back. Yeah. He didn't say that to him. He just kind of almost as if it was unspoken that he knew that possibly that was his last game.
Right, exactly. And it's funny, I kind of compared it to when Jason Kelce did his walk-off at the Super Bowl after the Eagles lost, but then he came back and played another year. Right. But it just kind of felt emotional looking at Travis Kelce and hearing all the reports that he gave a emotional speech to the players the night before, and it almost felt like it was like a goodbye speech. So we'll see. I think the smart thing is he's taking his time and not going to rush the decision, because why does he need to? He doesn't, right? Just as long as he makes that decision and lets Kansas City know in a timely fashion, that's all that matters. But it just to me feels like it's the end of the road. And like I said, he can go on tour with Taylor Swift and call it a day.
All right, last one for Q Myers from Joe and Q on 97.3 ESPN. Better NFC East team in 2025, Dallas or Washington?
Washington is not even close. Washington is not even close. And the reason why is they have the better quarterback. They have the better offensive coordinator. Jaden Daniels, I think, is only going to get better, and they've got a boatload of money. They've got a boatload of money to improve the team throughout the course of the offseason. Dallas does not. So Dallas they need Jesus to get to where they need to go. And
Dak said they're close, man. Yeah. He said the gap is not big.
Yeah, that's what he says. That's what he says. But, whatever you want to call that, that's not true. That's false. Like my partner Joe Fortenbaugh says, they're a team that is entertainment for entertainment purposes only. They're not a serious team. Washington is a serious team.
Q Myers, weekdays at noon right here on 97.3 ESPN. And, of course, he joins us here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. We'll have a little fun throughout the offseason. The draft is – you going to draft this year?
Absolutely. Got the combine around the corner, the draft in Green Bay, Pro Football Hall of Fame. The NFL never turns off, so it's go time.
Howie's season is here. We'll keep our eyes on that. And, of course, all the offseason news and notes right here on the Sports Bash. All right, Q, we'll talk to you, buddy.
All right, tell Paul George I need more than 2 points from him. Just saying.
That's coming up next here on the Sports Bash Live. We will get into Paul George's night. It's almost like he saw my rundown sheet here on the Sports Bash. A total disappointment last night, and maybe enough to end this Sixers run. That's next. This is the Sports Bash. That's Kendrick Perkins earlier today on SportsCenter. He said the Sixers should shop Paul George, and I can't argue with him at this point. Paul George looks like he has no desire to be in Philadelphia right now. Now, I know he's hurt. He's got this pinky problem, and it's likely causing some interference in his play. You can see he's always playing with it, the pinky. He can't kind of corral the basketball. But last night, no Joel Embiid. And then they whack you over the head with no Maxey. For God's sakes, I mean, how much could go wrong for this team that Maxey, a joy to watch, now has been sucked in to the stink of the Sixers. Tyrese Maxey, one of the most enjoyable players to watch in all of basketball, has all of a sudden been lumped in to this crap of a season that the Philadelphia 76ers have shoveled in our face. You know, I get it. Embiid, he's always hurt, and it's always something with him. But Maxey's been a joy. There is no indication, and then all of a sudden, hey, by the way, I got news for you. Maxey's not playing. So now Paul George is kind of left to kind of carry the bag by himself. You know, the guy they paid like $270 million. Hey, bud, can you put a couple points, a couple buckets for us? You know, last year the Sixers in Game 7 couldn't find a way to win because Tobias Harris put up a goose. So the guy they get to replace Tobias Harris gives you a deuce. Not a goose, a deuce. Not good enough. I got Quentin Grimes and Jared Butler. Are you kidding me? This thing has been an utter disaster this season. And you know what? Right now, you've got to get to the point where you have to wonder if anybody in the league, anybody, would have any interest in a Paul George at that price. Remember, why is he here? Because the Sixers gave him a 4th year. They were the one team that gave him the 4th year. Nobody else wanted to do that. He wanted to stay in L.A. He didn't want to be in Philadelphia. But as Stephen A. Smith described, Paul George took the money, and this is why this has turned into a disaster.
Enthused about being in Philadelphia. Now, we know he's a Palmdale native. That's why he didn't mind being with the Clippers out here. He was hoping and praying they would give him the money. The Sixers were the ones who ended up giving him that 4th year. He took the money because clearly he doesn't look like a dude that wants to play. That's what I'm seeing. I hope that I'm wrong. He's class personified, one of the best people you'll ever meet in professional sports, but he looks really, really bad.
It looks like a guy who's like, what did I do? What did I do? And we talked about this yesterday with A.J. Brown. Hey, I win this Super Bowl, and it wasn't what I thought. So these guys who are going all over the country to try to find a team that they can win a Super Bowl or a world championship with, maybe that's not the way to do it. Take the most money. You know, what's the difference between $270 million and $250 million? You know, the greed all over the world that we have to live through. I don't want to sit here and say, hey, because as Stephen A. Smith said, he's a good dude. Paul George seems like a really nice guy. Has not connected at all with this fan base. Not at all. Has anybody remember one distinguishable thing that Paul George has done or said? Nothing. Not one thing has Paul George done yet that makes you say, this guy wants to be here. This guy is a Philadelphia 76er. And look, this team has done a ton of things wrong. They make mistakes. But you've always said, hey, they've been a team that you know come playoff time, whether they make it to the finals or disappoint you, you have a belief that they can win. They might not always win, but you at least thought they could. And if they didn't win, it was a disappointment, but you were disappointed because you thought they can win. Now, you're back down the road of you don't give a bleep. And that's the worst place you can be. And that's because, you know, last night you got Paul George. That's a winnable game. I don't care. You got Paul George on your team playing against a donkey Nets team. That team stinks. That team is absolutely trash. They're worse than you are, although they beat you last night, so now you got the same record. But you have a roster that is way more financially obligated than them. And that's what you get last night? That's what you got the night before? It's unacceptable to lose 5 straight. No Embiid last night, no Maxey. And by the way, they don't play another game until next Thursday, a week from tonight. So Embiid doesn't play on the back-to-backs. You're telling me he's got a week off? He couldn't give you anything last night? Nothing? There was no possible way that you could say, hey, Joel, or I'm not putting this on Joel. I think Joel would play. This is on the organization. You're 20-33 at the time. You have a week off. You're telling me that Joel Embiid couldn't give you 20 minutes, 15, 12, 8, and they lost the game by 3 last night. Joel Embiid could go out in 8 minutes and score 10 points. So you're telling me with a week off, that's the decision you made? I don't know what's wrong with Maxey. What they say is wrong with Maxey?
They claim that he collided knees with a player.
Because he was terrible the night before.
They claim that he collided knees Tuesday night, and that the knee collision turned into something that he needed to get a day off because he had bruising.
Yeah, he needed a day off. He got 7 of them coming up. That not long enough?
Apparently not.
He couldn't give you 10 minutes last night? I mean, I don't know. The decisions that you're making are suggesting you're not all that interested in that. Listen, I don't care if they make the 10 seed or not. What's the difference? You're the 10 or you're out. That's what it's coming down to right now. You have a chance to be the 10 and play a play-in game and maybe make the 8 seed and then play Cleveland in the first round, and who the heck knows. But the decisions that you're making, listen, I get it. The doctors make the decisions, I guess. Who owns the team? How about the owner said to the guy, hey, Joel, how you feel? We're off for a week. You all right? You tell me Joel Embiid looked at him in the face if he was asked, are you able to go? You know, the doctors run the whole organizations now. I mean, what are we doing? What are we doing?
We all know Embiid would play if it was his choice. Like, I mean, the guy has played through all kinds of stuff.
Is it to the point where the team and the organization have lost now interest in the team as much? Like, they're looking at the fan base and saying, well, they don't care, so we shouldn't either.
I mean, if that is their,
mean,
if
what
that's
are we
their
at?
attitude, that makes it worse.
Oh, man. Stephen A. Smith, Paul George doesn't want to be in Philly.
He's averaging 10 points over the last 5 games. 2 of the last 5 games, he scored in single digits. Scored 9 one game, scored 2 last night. He's been horrible. And we're not accustomed to seeing that from him. I'm waiting to hear one of 2 things, Wendy. Either he's injured and playing through it, or he don't want to be in Philly.
Well, we know he's injured. The finger is a problem. I mean, it's obvious that that's an issue.
I think he's more injured than the finger, though.
Yeah, I mean, he's gone through other injuries, too, but I'm saying he's definitely injured. The finger's a problem. He's having trouble going left at all. He can't do anything with that left hand. And even on inbounds, you could see he's constantly looking at that finger. So he's out there just because he can run up and down the floor at this point. But he's certainly not the guy that you paid the money to. But he hasn't been that guy all season long. This has been a complete lost season of that trio together.
And I just wanted to say real quick, because you were talking about how Paul George has done nothing to connect with the city or endear himself to the fan base. I think a huge part of the failure for him has been his podcast. You know, you look at a guy like Big Play Slay. That guy has done an amazing job at taking his podcast and catering it to the Philly fan. He has become a guy who, when he first got here, people were like, is he a diva? Is he just here for a paycheck? Remember, he came here with Doug Peterson's last year. They were a losing team at that point. And he has endeared himself into this guy that the fan base loves. I think Paul George, he has this platform, he has this podcast, and he has done nothing with the podcast to put himself into the Philadelphia fans' interest, good graces, nothing.
I honestly, I mean, sure, I can agree with that because he has done nothing to connect. And I'll tell you what, I'll take it a step further. I can't believe I'm saying this, is Maxey, who's the joy of this team, has been sucked into this now.
Yeah.
Because he's no longer a joy. He's no longer the guy that you're like a breath of fresh air. The night before, after the game's over, he says, I don't know what was wrong. I just wasn't aggressive. I'll be more aggressive tomorrow night. Well, then tomorrow comes, he doesn't even play.
Mike, do you remember?
Maxey, though, real quick,
Yeah.
he was the guy that you're like, dude, this guy always has a smile. He's always a joy to watch. And even this team has sucked him into it now.
I don't know if you remember this, but a month ago, after one of the Sixers' losses, he was sitting in a chair after the game in his locker and like leaned back, and he had a look on his face like he was absolutely miserable. Like he wanted to be anywhere but there answering those questions. I mean, it looked like the life had like taken. It was like the joy of life was ripped from him, and he's just leaning back in this chair in his locker with a look on his face like, I do not want to be here.
Well, it's not what he signed
up.
up for. He's got the bag. Paul George has the bag. Embiid has the bag. And they think they're going to be this triple, threat. And they're not on the floor together once. They're 7-6 now when the three of them play together.
Yeah,
unacceptable.
13 games together. That's
13
nothing.
games, and you're about 500. So, all right, they were 7-3 with that crew after 10 games. They played 10 games, they went 7-3, and then somebody got hurt. I can't keep track of who, but somebody got hurt, didn't play, and now they're 7-6 with that team. So they were 7-3. They've lost 4 in a row when those guys play, and they're losing to Toronto. I mean, you're losing to bozo teams.
Well, the problem is, as we mentioned earlier this week, Mike, is the fact that they had 3 games against teams that were shorthanded when you had Embiid, George, and Maxey all on the floor. And they lost to all 3 of them. They lost to the Pistons with no Cade Cunningham. They lost to the Bucks with no Giannis Antetokounmpo. They lost to the Raptors without multiple guys on the court, and you couldn't beat any of them. So it's like, at what point are we looking around being like, what are we doing?
So, Kendrick Perkins, what is the Sixers' 3 biggest problems?
They should shut Joel Embiid down for the remainder of the season and let him get healthy and put a damn plan in place. That's number 1. Number 2, this franchise belongs to Tyrese Maxey. This is his team. And number 3, right now, Paul George can't play dead in the Western movie. I don't know what's going on, but he was the biggest acquisition this offseason for as him going to the Philadelphia 76ers.
Yeah, and it hasn't worked out at all. He just hasn't fit in. The other night he says it's been harder to mesh with Joel Embiid than he thought it was going to be. The Maxey thing, I do agree that you now have to start thinking about shutting Embiid down because now it might affect next season as well. Because if you don't think you can find a way to get rid of Paul George, you now have to then say, if we're stuck with him, we have to at least try to see if these 3 guys can play together and see if they can next season, because this season's lost. This season's a complete disaster. But what about the impact of the future of the Philadelphia 76ers? Remember, Josh Harris owns the Washington Commanders, and he has a pretty famous partner on that Washington Commander front office.
Josh Harris doesn't only own the Sixers. He owns the Washington Commanders. And he has a partner with the Washington Commanders named Irvin Magic Johnson. If you're in the company of this man, don't tell me that Magic Johnson is by your side and you don't take an opportunity to get his basketball opinions from the greatest point guard who ever lived and a 5-time champion. He knows the garbage that he owns in Philadelphia because I assure you at some point in time, Magic has told him so. That is bad news for Daryl Morey. That is bad news for the Embiids of the world, for the Paul George of the world.
And by the way, Bob Myers is also there in Washington. If I am Josh Harris, I am saying to him, hey, what do you think that we should do down I-95? Because I spent a ton of money, and this is all I'm getting. This is a mess. Help me get out of this mess.
It's amazing that Josh Harris has had more success with every other sports team except for the 76ers so far.
Well, to be fair, he has tried. He has spent money, but the injuries is just unbelievable what has happened here in Philadelphia. I mean, you cannot predict the injuries that have happened with this team.
That's true.
So it's not because he has not tried or has just neglected this organization. But the things that have happened to this organization, you can't write a book about it. If you did write a book, I'd want to read it because I can't believe what happens from season to season. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN this hour, brought to you by Broadleaf's Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning, your trusted source for heating, plumbing, service, and installation. 609-390-3907, online, broadleafs.net. More Sports Bash on the way, including football at 4 in 14 minutes. That's for sure. And I give him credit for trying, but guess what? It might be time to shut everybody down and just say, you know what? We'll live to fight another day here. That's Sham Charania from ESPN reporting that Paul George has been taking some sort of pain shots or something. Not that's insignificant to me. Like, then don't play. You're out there. You scored 2 points. Now I get it. You tried. Great. But now you're leaving yourself up for criticism.
Right.
Like, the season's a disaster.
Right, because now what you're doing is like, great, you're out there, but not doing anything to help the team.
No, if you're out there, you're leaving yourself to be criticized. The problem is he has not connected, so now he's trying to get out there because if he doesn't play, now he gets ripped even more for not playing. Completely bungled again, the situation. The situation's a disaster. It like, I get it. He did, what did he do? Tear a tendon in his pinky. And It's ridiculous. It's these things because you're like, that's what it is, a pinky, but I get it. It probably hurts like hell. But, like, it's like, are you kidding me? A pinky finger is what's holding this team? Like, it's just so apropos that the guy comes here, and it's not like he tore his ACL. It's a pinky finger. It is just so apropos that it's something as ridiculous as he tore a tendon in his pinky finger. Like, could you think of any more obscure injury to happen?
If there is, it's happened to the Sixers.
If there is, it happened. The guy has
Tourette's
Alouette or syndrome, some ridiculous thing that Markelle Fultz ended up with. Like, that happens.
Well, I was going to say, what about Embiid with the illness he had during the playoffs, right?
I mean, he's been broke his face three times. I mean, I think somebody put out a stat that in the history of the game, that injury has only occurred, like, say, 50 times. It's happened to Embiid 3 of them.
Right.
This guy has a pinky injury that is now causing him to miss time.
This team is an absolute dumpster fire.
Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, live videos streaming on the X platform, YouTube, at Mike Gill Show. Hit the subscribe button on the YouTube channel, and you can be a part of the Sports Bash each and every day. Coming up, it's football at 4. Andrew DeCecco will pop out of the Eagles locker room and into the Sports Bash on a Thursday afternoon. This hour of the show brought to you by Broadlee's Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning, your trusted source for heating, plumbing, service, and installation for generations. Call them at 609-390-3907, online, broadlees.net. I'm Mike Gill. Coming up, it is Andrew DeCecco for today's Football at 4. We're asking you, what's the thing you'll remember the most about this Eagles Super Bowl season? Text in at 609-403-0973. What will you remember most about this Eagles special Super Bowl season? Text in now. We'll read them off coming up. Shore Physicians Group, Orthopedic Surgery and Sports Medicine Division. Learn more at shorephysiciansgroup.com. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash, and I want to tell you about my friends at Game Day Men's Health in Egg Harbor Township. 1 in 4 men in over the age of 30, in the U.S. have low testosterone levels. Whether you're chasing peak performance, reigniting intimacy, or simply want to feel your best, Game Day Men's Health is defining a new era in men's health, delivering premium testosterone replacement therapy, removing the stigma around ED, and supporting weight loss with medical treatments and vitamin therapy. Fast appointments, immediate results, and expert guidance. No shortcuts. Their EHC office provides privacy, comfort, flat screen TVs, and zero fluff. Get stronger, get healthier, and get back in the game with a free testosterone test and consultation. A complete medical evaluation and customized game plan, on-site labs. You can get testosterone levels in just 15 minutes. Game Day Men's Health, EHT, 609-365-7088. Online on English Creek Avenue in EHT, GameDayMen'sHealth.com. Tell them Mike Gill sent you for a special offer. All right, Andrew DeCecco from InsideTheBirds.com is going to join us in just a second. Something that surprised him about how the Eagles dominated that game. That's what I want to get into. Something that surprised him about how the Eagles won that game. You know, I think we look at, they took away Barkley, right? Jalen Hurts stepped up. The Eagles didn't have to blitz to generate pressure. There was if you watched the mic'd up segment last night, there's a part of the mic'd up segment where Zach Bond, I think, taps Cooper DeJean, and he points at the scoreboard, and he's like, look at that, no blitzes, and pressure percentage, 38%. Bond, that was in the mic'd up segment last night. As we bring Andrew DeCecco in from the Inside the Birds podcast, InsideTheBirds.com, Football at 4. Andrew, welcome back, man. Great to see you down in NOLA. And what a performance by the Philadelphia Eagles, my friend.
Yeah, Mike, that was a dominant performance. The Eagles beat the Kansas City Chiefs in dominant fashion.
That was about as dominant as Jeff Kerr at that media party on Tuesday night down there. My man had every spot located. He knew where all the food was. He was my MVP of that party, but Jalen Hurts was the MVP of that party on Sunday night. And I want to get your takeaway.
Well, you gotta elevate your standards there. I couldn't speak to any that. I always stayed an hour at that party.
Well, Kerr was all over the place, man. He hit all the food stops. He was driving us all over that, walking us to every food stand in that place. He had the whole place mapped out. But Kansas City's game plan, obviously, was to take Saquon Barkley out of the game. And obviously, Jalen Hurts made some huge plays. But, what was something that impressed you the most about the Eagles' offense on Sunday night?
I really think just how Jalen Hurts was calm, cool, and collected. He was a cool customer, as he's been all season long. And they found ways around the Kansas City Chiefs trying to stop Saquon Barkley. I think that was the key. What happens when the Eagles can't get the running game going? Well, Jalen Hurts and Kellen Moore and company, they answered that question. So I think they played within themselves and they didn't try to do too much, and I thought that they really seized the moment.
One of the things we've been kind of discussing, I want to get your takeaway on this is, give me something. You were at the game. Something that surprised you about how the Eagles dominated that game. Did you go in with questions during the week wondering, hey, can this happen? Can that happen? So what's something that surprised you at how the Eagles were able to dominate so easily?
I just think how they were extremely physical in the trenches, and they really gave Kansas City Chiefs trouble there. It was never really a game, and I've never really seen Patrick Mahomes look flustered like he did in that game. So I think that's a kudos to the players executing and playing physical and winning their matchups, but also for Vic Fangio crafting an all-time game plan and preventing a three-peat. And I just can't say enough about him. I think if you were to award an MVP for a candidate for a coach, it would be Vic Fangio.
Yeah, Fangio definitely had a game plan. The mic'd up segment on NFL Network last night, there's that moment where Bond taps Cooper DeJean, and he's like, look, no blitzes, and look at our pressure rate. Like, it's almost as if they were surprised at how dominant they were at times.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed that way, but when I wrote a story about this. when they put in the work and they all buy into the coaching and they progress and they're all obsessed with getting better as they all are, it's not really a surprise because I have a unique perspective because I've seen the team come together over the last several months and been there for every practice, been there for every training camp practice, talked to different position coaches. And so you have a different viewpoint when you see how, whether it's their different philosophies and ideologies, whether it's certain techniques that they're working on, it's not really a surprise. And they all rally to the football. They all have a like-minded mentality. So I think that the defense was definitely the MVP of that game.
Yeah, and let's talk a little bit about it. I mean, one of the things I love talking to you about, Andrew, is, we talk draft. You're so knowledgeable on the draft and that process. So many young guys. Nolan Smith, a guy that maybe some people wrote off and didn't know if he was going to contribute as a late first-round pick. He didn't do much as a rookie. He said after the game, I want more from Vic Fangio. I want everything that he has. I want all the knowledge he has, and I want to keep learning and keep learning. It shows that we heard all the rumors and reports about him not meshing with the Miami players. That seems to be the exact opposite here.
Yeah, and again, as I wrote, it takes a certain makeup from players to have that kind of buy-in and to be willing to be coached hard. I think working in the Eagles' favor is that they have a lot of players who are coming from winning programs, or they're all obsessed with the continuous improvement. You don't often see that. And I think when you're looking at it in terms of the Eagles having the youngest defense, it makes it all the more remarkable that they are able to adapt and really immerse themselves in a coordinator and his scheme that's very demanding, and he's very authoritative and all those things. So I think that's a testament to the players and their willingness to be coached hard.
Talking with Andrew DeCecco from InsideTheBirds.com, and two guys who maybe aren't as high profile, but I want to get your take on how the game was changed by Milton Williams and Josh Sweat.
Yeah, Josh Sweat. I mean, you could also make an argument for him for MVP. 2.5 sacks. Both of his full sacks came when the game was still hanging in the balance there briefly. I mean, look, he helped himself immensely. I think he's going to get paid on the open market. You step up in a big game like that, a lot of teams are going to be lining up to kind of throw the bag your way. Same thing goes for Milton Williams, just physical dominant in the interior. It's been that way all season. Again, this shouldn't be really a surprise if everyone's been paying attention. He's just been dominating his matchups, and I think that, when he's kind of been thrust into a more prominent role, he's answered the bell every time. He's handled it, and I think that Milton Williams is definitely going to be a player that I think is going to command a ton of money, in particular on the open market.
Yeah, and then, of course, there's Zach Bond, who's a free agent as well. He comes up with the interception and really just kind of showed how important that position was. 2 years ago, T.J. Edwards was there, had a nice year. They go to the Super Bowl, and then they get Bond back. Do you think they will prioritize bringing Bond or any one of those three back, or do you anticipate them three guys getting too much on the open market to return?
I think Bond will be a priority just because they played linebacker carousel long enough, and I believe that that's going to be, I don't want to say he's a homegrown talent, but he's somebody that Howie Roseman and Vic Fangio identified. So there's going to be an attachment there, and they want to see that growth and development through. What he's been able to accomplish in just a matter of months working with Vic, I think, has been nothing short of spectacular. And I imagine the Eagles are going to continue to build on that. They also have Nakobe Dean there, who's going to continue to grow, and they have a good tandem. They work really well in tandem together. So I think he's going to be a high priority.
Yeah, we'll see, because if somebody, I think T.J. Edwards got about $7-8 million somewhere in that range, and the Eagles said too much for our blood. So we'll see if they decide to go a little bit higher this time on Zach Bond. I want to get your take on Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell as they came in. What did they do to change the secondary?
Well, they bring youth, they bring speed, they bring athleticism, and they bring ball skills to different degrees. I think Cooper DeJean has more natural ball skills than Quinyon Mitchell, but yeah, they just add a lot more range and speed and optionality to the back end, and you got to give them credit too, because that's not an easy scheme to learn as a rookie, and a lot of times playing those positions, I think Cooper plays the toughest position on the defensive side of the ball. For him to be able to grasp it like he did, and that speaks to his football IQ and all the draft pundits saw, and what made him such a highly coveted prospect. And for Quinyon Mitchell, He's already a lockdown corner. So talent matters, but also being able to have that high level of football IQ and grasp the intricacies of a pretty complex defense. I think that speaks to where they are in terms of their understanding of an NFL defense.
Well, and Andrew, you wrote about it over at InsideTheBirds.com that the D was kind of built for a blowout here, and the way that they kind of at it, these young athletes up front that they were able to get to the quarterback without having to blitz. You got contributions from the linebacker spot, and then the back end was so active. It just set up where really you look around, they don't have a weak spot on the defense. Really, there's not a weak spot on this roster, and they have some depth as well. It is truly a special roster.
Yeah, and I think to take this a step further, players that have been tapped on the shoulder to go in at a moment's notice, like the Isaiah Rodgers of the world, like the Oren Burks. I mean, those guys are unsung heroes, but I'm going to mention them now because they don't get talked about nearly enough, and they've all played critical roles in helping the defense. They've navigated rough patches when Slay's been out, when Quinyon Mitchell's been out. Isaiah's been in there making plays on the football. When Nakobe Dean left, that's a huge void there. Oren Burke stepped in and made a ton of plays, and I know that there were a lot of people after that Green Bay game that wanted Jeremiah Trotter Jr. in there. The Eagles stuck with the course. They know they're veteran, and he made a ton of big plays for the Eagles down the postseason. Jalix Hunt, another classic example. A lot of folks expected him to be a redshirt player. He stepped in and he made a ton of plays. So it's beyond their stars playing well. That's also very important. They've also got a lot of contributions from complementary pieces that made it all possible.
Yeah, and I want to get your thoughts. Josh Sweat, you mentioned before, likely will get a lot of money. Is this a situation where they believe that Jalix Hunt can almost step into that Josh Sweat role next year?
I mean, I don't know if Jalix is ready to take on 50 snaps a game, but I think that he can be a third edge rusher in a rotation and capably continue to grow and develop. He's going to get stronger. He'll put the work in this offseason, but I think that he's now no longer a fourth or a fifth edge rusher. He's elevated. He's proven enough, especially under the brightest of lights, that he can handle whatever's thrown his way. And he learned a lot faster than he was given credit for. Before he even took a snap, when he was drafted, a lot of people were saying, oh, that was a reach. Houston Christian, it's going to take at least a couple of years before he could do anything. It was all baseless. He hadn't even taken a snap yet. And what did he do? He went out there, he had a decent training camp, and then he continued to get better because he, like every player on that defense, doesn't shy away from putting in the work. So, yeah, I think we'll probably be a third. I don't know that he's going to step in and be Josh Sweat next year.
We'll leave Andrew DeCecco with this. I know the Eagles are doing their locker stuff today, so he's got to get back in there, spending a couple of minutes with us here on Football at 4. Kellen Moore is out. Thoughts on replacing him? Any thoughts in your mind on internal candidate or maybe somebody outside the building in your mind?
Internal would be Kevin Patullo. If they went that route, he's Nick Sirianni's right-hand man. He oversees the passing game. And he holds a prominent role, and he's highly regarded inside that building. Whether or not they looked on the outside, there's a couple candidates I'm keeping my eye on. I'm going to save that for my podcast or my story and expand on that a little bit more. But internally, it would be Kevin Patullo.
All right, we'll keep our eye on that because that'll be the first big decision that Howie Roseman has to make in the offseason before free agency gets here. And, of course, we'll have Andrew on to get you ready for the NFL draft. The Eagles will pick number 32 as Super Bowl champions. Andrew, I guess that locker room party was pretty wild, huh?
Yeah, it was. Definitely.
All right, man. Well, welcome back. And, of course, we'll get you ready for the draft in the offseason with Andrew here on Football at 4. Thanks, man.
All right, Mike. Be good.
All right. Read his recap on the Super Bowl locker room over at InsideTheBirds.com. I know a lot of the beat guys today are bouncing in and out. The Eagles are having their locker room clear out. So for him to give us a couple of minutes, we thank him for that here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. And our Super Bowl recap coverage on the Sports Bash is brought to you by the experts at Shore Physicians Group, Orthopedic Surgery and Sports Medicine Division. Learn more at shorephysiciansgroup.com. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, live video streaming on the X platform and on YouTube at Mike Gill Show. So a little bit of a recap there of Andrew's perspective. He was in New Orleans. I do want to get back into a little bit. So I'm interested to see what you guys think. I see people tweeting or posting at Mike Gill Show on the X platform about who the Eagles' opponent could be in 2025. So Amon-Ra St. Brown comes out and he basically says, look, if our defense was healthy, we would probably beat the Eagles. I can't say that he's right or wrong. They were the best team all year. They were the number 1 seed. They did have a lot of injuries. They could not overcome them. Does Philadelphia go into 2025 as the clear favorite? We know free agency and the draft will have a lot to say about that. But think about this. The Eagles went to the Super Bowl in 2022. In 2023, they lost Jonathan Gannon, Shane Steichen, and replaced it with 2 new coordinators. That's exactly what the Detroit Lions are about to go through right now. They have to replace both coordinators, Aaron Glenn, who went to the Jets, Ben Johnson, who went to the Bears. By the way, you saw Aaron Glenn put his stamp on things right off the bat. Earlier today, they said, no more Aaron Rodgers. He gone. You wonder if Aaron Glenn and that regime sat down and watched Enigma on the network platform the other day. Josh, have you watched that yet? Have you watched the Aaron Rodgers Enigma yet? Did you check in on that yet? I know you said you wanted to.
I want to, yes.
So you haven't seen it yet?
I haven't seen it yet.
I wonder if the Jets brass watched the Enigma
sat down
thing
and
and said,
it.
you know what? I think we're okay.
I think that if they would have done what I did, which is read the Ian O'Connor book about Rodgers, they probably would have had the same reaction as a lot of people did watching the documentary. I think the documentary just visualizes a lot of the stuff.
Yeah, well, so what you're saying you're more hoity-toity than people. You're a reader. Other people want visuals.
No, I just say I don't have Netflix right
now. Well, I didn't read Ian O'Connor's book, but I did watch Enigma, and I'm thinking, did Aaron Glenn, I don't know who the new GM is there, they sat down and said, let's pop this on and see what we're getting
still
into.
Interviewing people, I think.
I thought they hired somebody, but they sat down and said, you know what, let's take a look at this thing. And at the end of it, they both looked at each other and said, you know what, I think we're okay moving on from Aaron Rodgers right now. But they've got to replace Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn. I mean, 2 high-profile offensive and defensive coordinator.
Darren Moogie.
There you go. Yeah, I thought they hired somebody.
The Jags are still interviewing people.
Jacksonville is still interviewing, yes.
I mixed them up.
So
they're 2 losing franchises.
Yeah. So Detroit has to replace both coordinators. We're going to find out about Dan Campbell, much like last year with Nick Sirianni, where Nick got 2 new coordinators, very inexperienced. Desai had coordinated for 1 year in Chicago, and Brian Johnson had never been a coordinator. That's what Detroit's going to have to deal with now. So Dan Campbell is going to have to either find strong coordinators or step his game up.
I would just say, don't forget, folks, that it's not just Nick Sirianni that struggled when he lost coordinators. There's a whole litany.
Andy Reid when he was here.
Andy Reid. Mike Shanahan when he was in Denver. That was the beginning of the end of him with the Broncos. It was any of these guys, they lose their staples. The guys they rely on, they have problems. And I'm not trying to speak ill of Dan Campbell, but I do wonder how much of his success was him and how much of his success was him leaning on those guys.
Oh, I think, we saw this year. Like last year, I think Nick had too much on his plate because of how inexperienced his coordinators were. I think he had to be a lot more hands-on. This year, he had more trust in his coordinators, so he didn't have to worry about that. Like, did you watch the Mic'd Up last night?
Yeah.
So, by the way, Sirianni's like, he's going nuts on the sideline. I don't know how you can't love that. Like, I think we want these coaches, like Tom Landry still wearing a suit and a hat.
And a fedora.
Right? Like, we still picture that's what the coach should look like. Like, the coach running down the sideline.
Dude, he was so excited when DeJean scored the touchdown. It was great.
He was so excited the whole game. But there's other moments where he says certain things, and you're like, this guy is on top of stuff. Like, this guy, it's almost like he just doesn't fit the bill of being someone who has all the box checked.
Right.
So he seems so scatterbrained and frantic, yet he's the exact opposite. He is so prepared, and like the one where Mahomes kind of shoveled past the ball forward, and Sirianni is on the official immediately. Was he over the line of scrimmage? Was he over the line of scrimmage? Was he over the line? Like, he asked the guy, and the guy's like, oh, they're saying he's not. And he's like, all right, they're saying he's not. But, like, when you watched the game, were you thinking that same thing? Or, like, I'm like, I never even thought whether or not he was over the line. But, like, there were some other moments in that last night where I'm like, man, Sirianni really does a good job.
Sirianni is as locked in as any coach I've ever seen in a game. And I think that is a huge reason why the Eagles won the Super Bowl, right? It's because of the fact that you have a guy who is the CEO of the team who is as connected to what is going on as anybody.
My takeaways from a lot of this is he is so prepared, has the team so prepared. He is one of those guys that just does not leave any stone unturned. Like, probably sits in a meeting room, watches video on something that is so insignificant, but in his mind, for the one time that opportunity might come up, he's prepared for it. And he just doesn't fit the bill for that, which is, I get it. It's understandable. Like, the world is evolving and changing before our eyes. The sport that we knew and we think we understand is now kind of shifting a little bit. And here's a guy, he's kind of rocking the boat a little bit.
Is Nick Sirianni then, Mike, the face of the new NFL? Maybe that this is the next evolution of coaching. That it's going to be these type of guys.
Well, I think you've seen a lot of like the college game coming here. Chip Kelly, he just got paid $6 million to be the coordinator for the Raiders. He's the highest paid coordinator, I think, in the offensive coordinator, maybe in the league right now. Yeah. I think you're going to see more of these younger, innovative minds. I mean, I think that's the thing. Although, look at Vic Fangio. There is something to be said for a guy who has a little crust under his, in his eyes.
He's a coordinator. I'm looking at the head coach. Is the head coach? You mentioned the visual of Tom Landry, or back in the for years.
Well, I don't know. I mean, look at this last hiring process. You saw Ben Johnson, an offensive coordinator, kind of a young guy. Aaron Glenn.
He's a bit zany. Did you see the video of him running around the Chicago Bears offices?
Yep. Aaron Glenn, a defensive coordinator. Liam Cohn, a offensive coordinator.
He's a bit weird.
Kind of an out there guy. I don't know what teams. I think everybody's looking. Remember when the Eagles fired Andy Reid, and Jeffrey Lurie said, we want to be 5 years ahead of being 5 years ahead. So they hired Chip Kelly. That didn't work out. So I don't know where, is Nick Sirianni 5 years ahead of being 5 years ahead? I don't think anybody, listen, I know I can't sit here and say, I knew this guy was going to win a Super Bowl. You were stunned. You didn't have any idea where this guy came from.
I think the only people who thought that were the people in the Eagles building. I don't think anyone outside the Eagles building ever thought for a minute.
How could you? Seriously,
well, first of all, no one knew who he was.
Exactly. Nobody knew who he was.
Jobs.
You can't, nobody listening out there could say, hey, I knew this guy. I could say, hey, I'm going to give the guy a shot. I'm willing to.
Mike, I remember in January.
It was on my birthday. They hired Nick Sirianni.
Well, I'm going to go before that, though. When his name came up, you and I looked at each other right here in the Ocean Casino Resort Studios. We're like, who? We both had to do research.
Who would ever hear of him?
No one ever heard of him.
Of course he would. And that's what I'm saying. No one ever heard of this guy.
Jobs. He was the ultimate. I mean, it was like Andy Reid deja vu back in '99. Everyone's looking around like, who is this guy?
Sports Best Live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Thanks to Andrew. We had a good show so far today. If you missed any of it, you can go back on the YouTube channel and on the X platform and watch John Marks, Q Myers. Coming up a little bit later on in the show. Well, actually, coming up next, I should say, it's Nick's Nuggets. Nick Earnshaw is here. I can't believe it's already that time of the day. This show is flying by here on the Sports Bash. Hey, I want to tell you about the Nizam's Indian Restaurant, Route 40, Egg Harbor Township. They're the number 2 best restaurant in all of New Jersey, voted by NJ.com. It's the best Indian restaurant in the state, welcoming bookings and hosting events and complete food catering services. You can reserve tables or even book the entire restaurant to host a private party or a corporate event. They've got 3-day lunch buffets on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays from 11:30 to 3 with over 20 items from their menu on display. They're open 7 days a week, 11:30 to 9:30. Now offering 3-day lunch buffet, Friday, Saturday, Sunday from 11:30 to 3. Visit thenizams.com for more information. Coming up, another edition of Nick's Nuggets with Nick Earnshaw here on the Sports Bash.
My brother-in-law died suddenly, and now my sister and her kids have to sell their home. That's why I told my husband we could not put off getting life insurance any longer. An agent offered us a 10-year, $500,000 policy for nearly $50 a month. Then we called SelectQuote. SelectQuote found us identical coverage for only $19 a month, a savings of $369 a year.
Whether you need a $500,000 policy or a $5 million policy, SelectQuote could save you more than 50% on term life insurance.
For your free quote, call SelectQuote at 1-800-478-6688. That's 1-800-478-6688. Or go to SelectQuote.com. 1-800-478-6688. That's 1-800-478-6688.
SelectQuote. We shop. You save. Full details on example policies at selectquote.com/commercials.
I'm Mike Mackler. At Goldenberg Mackler, we represent you, not the insurance companies. When seriously injured in any type of accident, call us. We'll speak with you for free and fight to get you the money you deserve. When injured, make the right call to Goldenberg Mackler.
For the best lawyer, call Goldenberg Mackler with 4 convenient locations to better serve you: Atlantic City, Northfield, Rio Grande, and Vineland. Call us at 609-344-7131.
Progressive Insurance presents the Sports Flash on 97.3 ESPN. NBA, the Sixers entering the All-Star break with the game in San Francisco on Sunday. Philadelphia lost to Brooklyn Wednesday night at the Barclays Center 100-96, dropping their 5th straight game. Quentin Grimes with 30 points in the loss. Philadelphia returning on February 20th when they take on the Boston Celtics. Major League Baseball, Phillies had pitchers and catchers report Wednesday in Clearwater as they begin spring training. First full spring training workout will be on Monday. Phillies opening up their Grapefruit League schedule February 22nd when they take on Detroit. Philadelphia Eagles will be honored with a parade parade and ceremony on Friday. The city expecting 1 million people to attend, with the parade starting at 11 a.m. after Philadelphia won their second Super Bowl in franchise history on Sunday, beating Kansas City. Progressive Insurance, bundle auto and home, renters or condo, and save with Progressive. I'm Tony Desiri, and that's your Sports Flash on 97.3 ESPN.
From the Town Square, New Jersey Info and Weather Network, I'm Chief Meteorologist Dan Zarrow. Finally, a nice sunny day on deck for tomorrow. Unfortunately, it's going to be cold, and more inclement wintry wet weather rolls in this weekend. Clearing out tonight, low of 28 degrees, wind chill probably dipping into the teens. Tomorrow, sunny, breezy, and cold, high of only 37. Mostly cloudy and 41 Saturday. Could see a little bit of snow during the day, turning to rain Saturday night into Sunday. Get weather 24/7 wherever you are. Download our free mobile app today.
At 4:33, this hour of the Sports Bash is brought to you by the experts at Shore Physicians Group, Orthopedic Surgery and Sports Medicine Division. Learn more at shorephysiciansgroup.com. Mike Gill and the Sports Bash live. Nick Earnshaw is host of the Shift podcast and producer of the Locker Room weekends on 97.3 ESPN. He joins us now with another edition of Nick's Nuggets, and they are brought to you by the Fanatics Sportsbook at Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City. And, of course, Super Bowl 59 is in the books. March Madness coming up. We got the Masters on the way. Phillies pitchers and catchers are in the house. I don't know if the NBA playoffs are going to include the Sixers this year. They had another rough night at the office. But let's get another edition of Nick's Nuggets here on the Sports Bash. Nicky Earnshaw is here. What's up, buddy?
Afternoon, Mike Gill. I happened to be listening a little earlier with you and Johnny Mark, so it would take him $3,000 to wake up at 4 a.m. to go to the parade. How much would it take you, Mike?
Yeah, it might be. I mean, $3,000. He said 4:30. He said 2,500 just to go.
Just to
but
go.
If it was earlier in the morning,
yeah,
it was $3,000.
So if you had to get up at 4 in the morning, because I will be up at 4 o'clock. I plan on getting to the train station 5:30, and then making our way into the city, taking Patco. I know they're only doing certain train stations as well. So if you're taking that, be mindful of that. I know Lindenwold, Woodcrest, I think Ferry Avenue and City Hall are some of the other ones they're using too. But I'm going for free. I'll wake up middle of the night. It doesn't matter. A parade doesn't happen sometimes too often. So 2 in 7, 8 years, that's pretty good. I'm going to enjoy it. And I'll get up at any time, Mike, anytime.
Well, I guess in 2008, the first championship, I was really old enough to kind of like think about going to it. But by that point, how old was I? 38 years old. So I think at that point I decided, I think I'm a little too old for the parade stuff. I just don't like crowds. I don't like people who are like bumping into you shoulder to shoulder. Like that kind of stuff doesn't appeal to me.
Yeah, listen, I don't go to too many of these types of events. So like, every once in a while, for a parade, for a championship, I'll step a little outside my comfort zone and head into the crowd tomorrow. It's going to be a fun day. It's going to be freezing. I got to pick out an outfit tomorrow. I don't know what I'm going to wear. I know I got hand warmers. I think I might wear 3 pairs of socks, 2 pairs of pants. It's gonna be cold. I remember the last time. It was freezing last time. Back in 2018.
And I'm not a baby about the cold weather, but like I don't mind. Like if I know it's cold, I'll dress for the cold. Yeah. I'm okay with that. But like it just adds to like, I don't really have any interest. Hey, listen, I'm not knocking people who want to go. And by the way, if you're listening and you're going to the parade tomorrow, send us a text 609-403-0973. And I want people to text in pictures of the parade. Now, I have heard that the cell service is going to be almost nil tomorrow.
Yeah, I might have to record some with you in the morning or something, and you'll give a little shout out or something. I'll get you some voicemail. I'll leave something for you, Mike, in the 97.3 ESPN studios. I'll do something. I will try and get some pictures to you at some point. Maybe you can use it for the Nuggets segment. But we already know it's going to be a crazy day down there.
Yeah, I got a nice TV in the studio here. I'll be watching for you.
All right, look for me. I'm going to try and make my way to the front. I do find the camera. The camera does find me every once in a while. We know how that rolls. But we got to get into number one, and I do want to talk about this parade a little bit. I don't know if you saw, but Ashlyn Sullivan of NBC Sports Philly tweeted out a picture, and all of the Philadelphia Eagles got a bottle of Don Julio for the parade tomorrow. Every single Eagle got one in their locker. She tweeted out a picture. I believe it was Cooper DeJean's Don Julio. Hilarious. And then also a little other parade nugget. Chris Long's fur jacket is going to make an appearance. He talked about it on his podcast. We still don't know who that may be just yet, Mike. I wonder who are you predicting that gets Chris Long's jacket, and who's going to have probably the most Don Julio tomorrow?
All right, so I like the question. The Don Julio, I think you got a lot of options there. But for the jacket, I got to go Lane Johnson, right? Lane Johnson has been a WWE.
Said no already, I think. I think he already said no. He's out. I think Lane Johnson's already out. Yes, I think it's not Lane Johnson. So it's somebody else.
All right. So Josh has a guess here or something. He knows something.
So Long explained on his podcast that it was not a white guy, to the chagrin of Dr. Fax. Because Dr. Fax, he wanted it to be Cooper DeJean wearing the jacket.
Mm-hmm.
But Long said, I can tell you it's not a white guy.
Okay, so I'm trying to narrow it down to someone who played with Long. There's not many. Brandon Graham would probably be, I guess, the only other guy left on the team.
The biggest rumor out there is Mailata.
Mailata's another one. Mailata did say that if he said, yeah, we'll see if I get enough of liquid courage. So the Don Julio probably going to Mailata.
All right, so Don Julio's going Mailata, and then Jackie going BG? I mean, it could be BG.
Well, I know Johnny Marks brought up that he thought Landon Dickerson could be the guy who takes the mic and becomes the speaker. You got Juergens. Does Juergens want to, follow the footsteps of Kelsey as the center who goes and, he's got a little bit of a wacky – his hairdo's poor. I mean, he's got a terrible do.
I mean, listen, I'll take a terrible do for a center. I mean, Jason Kelsey had that terrible do for a while. He had that mop on his head for a few years back, if you remember, back in the mid-2010s.
I was watching –
he had a brutal one, too.
I was watching the Mic'd Up last night, and I'm like, boy – I said to my girlfriend, because she wouldn't know Juergens by name, but I'm like, look at 51's do, man. It is not good. I mean, that is a terrible look. So he could be a guy that maybe – now, Mark suggested that Dickerson could wear, the overalls.
Yeah.
He could be looking like Hillbilly Jim from the WWE back in the 80s.
He's done that multiple times, too.
Yeah.
Dickerson has done the overalls with, no shirt on underneath.
The Don Julio could be a lot. If everybody – I could see everybody cheersing that up.
Yeah,
the only guy on the team doesn't drink, by the way, is Slay.
What's that?
Slay's the only guy on the team that doesn't drink.
He's the only guy on the team?
Yeah.
That is confirmed?
Oh,
how do we know that?
Well, Slay has talked about it on his podcast. He doesn't drink.
Yeah, but I'm saying we know he's the only guy?
Well, according to Slay, he's the only guy.
Okay, all right.
I don't think Jalen's much of a drinker either. If you saw him on Jimmy Fallon, he kind of gave away the beer. He wasn't really utilizing it. I don't think you really saw him take a couple of sips on
really quick, Nick, do you think
that's
because he doesn't drink or because he doesn't like beer?
I don't know. Maybe it's a beer thing. Who knows? I guess we're going to find out. Maybe he's a Don Julio guy. I mean, everyone got one in their locker rooms or in their locker for clean out day for tomorrow. So I'm curious to see who goes to town. Mekhi Becton said he's ready for a party. I'm paraphrasing, but he said he's ready for a party. That guy could be flying under the radar as a guy who's a big-time partier. That's a big man.
I'll tell you who could possibly rock the jacket, man, is A.J. Brown. How about that?
It could be. You know what? I think that's a good one right there. I think A.J. Brown could be the guy because everyone's talking about him, the Instagram posts, etc. He comes out with the jacket on. I could see it being A.J.
Yeah, possible. A.J. Brown, keep in. And Devontae, I know he doesn't say much, but you could see him maybe styling and profiling.
Yeah, because he always shows
I
up to the
like all
game.
this. See, I don't want to go to the parade. I don't care about the parade, but I like all this stuff. Like this stuff, like to see the inner child come out of these guys who win a title and then just go like crazy. Like the inner kid of them comes out. This is what I appreciate.
Yeah, I mean, do you remember a few years back in Tampa when the Bucks won and Tom Brady was lit up and everyone was just stunned of Tampa Tom having a good time?
Yeah,
and
they were on the boats.
Yeah, they were throwing the Lombardi off the boats.
Right, and you'll never top Kelsey. I mean,
no, you can't top Kelsey. There's nothing to top with Kelsey. I don't think anyone out there who gives a speech or dresses up tomorrow should try and be Jason Kelsey. That's what they can't do. You can't try and emulate Kelsey. You got to do your own thing. I think Sirianni's going to have a memorable speech. That's my guy I'm going with. I think Sirianni's going to be fired up tomorrow.
I was going to say, Sirianni, he could be another one that can, let his puff his chest out a little bit and maybe have a little liquid courage and have a little fun with the fans.
Yeah, I think I'm going with Sirianni as the guy to have a little bit of Don Julio and have one of the most memorable speeches tomorrow. That's my guy I'm going.
The whole you're loving me now.
Yeah, like he did with the fans earlier in the season. When I said the next day I wanted to fire because I couldn't stand it. Now I've eaten my words completely, and I said it weeks ago that I ate my words on that one. So congrats to Sirianni.
Yeah, and I guess does Kellen Moore get the mic, or they want to stay away from that?
I think you got to keep Kellen Moore off to the side a little bit. He's just kind of coming up, saying hello, saying his goodbyes for the parade, heading right back down to New Orleans to be in the basement of that division.
He did say he will be there. He did say that he will be in Philly for the parade, as did Jason Kelsey said he will be at the parade for the Eagles tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm going to go BG with the jacket, and I'll go Sirianni has a memorable speech after a couple shots of Don Julio. So those will be my predictions, Mike Gill. All right. Nugget number 2, you mentioned and you brought up the NFL films mic'd up last night. I was ready to go. I had the popcorn ready, dished out the ice cream, Mike. It was appointment television. And my favorite moment was Nick Sirianni last night when he told and tried to push Kellen Moore to call that play for Devontae Smith to go for him. Everyone thought they were going to run, and they put the game away. I believe it was in the third quarter. That was my favorite moment of the mic'd up, where Sirianni pushes Kellen Moore to call the deep shot to Devontae Smith. Mike, that must have been my favorite one out of all of them because it shows who the CEO head coach is and who can make decisions like that. And that's what a CEO head coach does.
Yeah, I think you got a little glimpse of what Sirianni does on the sidelines on game day. He's kind of like, Kellen has plays, and then, hey, listen, everybody, you need someone to bounce stuff off of sometimes. Like, hey, what do you think here? Take a shot? And it's like, yeah, let's take a shot right here. Like, Kellen's like, hey, we had this play in our back pocket. This is the score. What do you think? And this is where Sirianni affirms, if we score here, this game is over. Go for it. So, you always have an idea, and sometimes you want to throw that idea off of somebody and just to see whether or not that idea, and Kellen Moore going to the head coach and saying, hey, I'm thinking about this, and that's a good thought. Go for it.
Yeah, I thought it was the best moment of the entire mic'd up overall. I mean, there were so many great ones, but that one really sticks out and shows the leader Sirianni is. And then you see how emotional he is, right? Everyone sees that on national television, but, going up to guys, running down the sideline, high-fiving Kellen Moore, the whole thing. I thought that was the best moment of the mic'd up. Did you have any in particular moment that stood out to you, Mike?
Yeah, a couple. I thought when Jalen Hurts told Saquon Barkley that he was the missing piece. That was like it's almost like you're Pete Rose, man. We needed you to get over the top. And Barkley says, no, it's a great team. He's like, yeah, I know, but we needed you. Like, you were the difference maker for us. I thought that was cool. I thought seeing Barkley be a leader, like you saw, like the penalty early in the game, and he told everybody, forget about it, move on, wash that. That was another one. I also saw, I don't know if anybody caught it. It was late in the program. They win the Super Bowl. They're going out in the field, and there's some guy who walks up to Jalen Hurts, and he's like, Super Bowl MVP. And he's like, nah, I'm Super Bowl champion. Like, he was almost like, I don't care about the MVP. My team just won the Super Bowl.
Yeah, that was a good one too. When the game ended, when the game finished, one of the NFL, officials went up to him and told him he was the MVP. And he's like, nah, I'm a Super Bowl champion, not an MVP. So like that just shows the selflessness of Hurts and the rest of the roster. Saquon was all over that thing. They showed him throughout the hour-long program, going up to every guy to just stay even keel. And you even saw the defense. That was another part. Zach Bond going to the defense after the big plays and telling everyone taking a big, deep breath to stay even keeled. That was pretty awesome, too.
One of my favorite moments was a non-Eagles moment, though.
Well,
I don't remember who it was for Kansas City, but when he looked up, he just looked at the guy next to him. He goes, they just won't stop coming after us. They're just they're relentless right now. They just will not stop coming after us.
Yeah, that whole thing was just awesome. And you were just waiting for all the mic'd up moments. I think they put it out on YouTube now too. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, the Sirianni moment was probably my favorite out of all of them, with the play with Kellen Moore. Saquon was all over it, being a leader, and then the Jalen one you brought up, absolutely fantastic. All right, we're gonna move from the gridiron to the diamond. We gotta talk a little Phils, Mike. I sent you this story last night regarding Alec Bohm, and he's down in spring training already. And there were, according to reports and Phillies coaches, is that Alec Bohm has had a little bit of a shift in attitude. We remember all last year, Mike, everything with Alec Bohm, throwing the temper tantrums on the side in the dugout after striking out, that whole thing. And now it's coming out that that Alec Bohm, according to PhilliesNation.com, has had a little bit of a growing up period, like once again. And that's according to Phillies coaches as well. And they're going to need him to grow up a little bit and step up. Because remember, they're bringing the whole daycare back. They're bringing pretty much the same roster back. They need him to not be like how he was last year. That was insane what he was doing on the bench.
Well, if he's like he was in the first half, you're all right. If he's
You're all
like
good.
the guy in the second half, no bueno. I mean, yesterday Dave Dombrowski said it. He said, look, this guy was the starting third baseman in the All-Star game. He's not a schlep rock, but in the second half of the season, really after he came back from that injury, it seemed like he never recovered from the injury in terms of production, and then his production carried over to his behavior. Now, there was a lot of speculation last year that he was dating ESPN's Aaron Dolan. That has been confirmed. They were at the Super Bowl together. Yep. So maybe he's found a little something. Maybe that settled him down a little bit. Now he feels like, hey, the next point of my career is maturing, found a little love, and now time to start to step it up and become the next level of baseball player. You're a starting all-star. What's next for me is that next level, all right? That's what I want to see, because I'm an Alec Bohm guy. I've always been a Bohmer, but the playoffs last year and the month of September, he was not very good. And then, the slamming of the helmet, can't justify that. But he was very productive for this team for basically up until August, until he got hurt.
Yep. And Rob Thompson had a lot of positive things to say about him. He said, quote, they said he's so positive. He seems like a different guy, like he's grown up again. He's grown up so much since we first brought him into the big leagues. Now it looks like he's taken another step. So I'm really excited to see what he can do. That's from Rob Thompson. You need Alec Bohm this year. You need him to hopefully grow up a little bit. Maybe, it was just the injury thing. It set him back a little bit, bad timing, all that. He's a positive guy now. I'm like, positive Bohm. We love to see it. We'll see if it sticks out on throughout the season.
All right, there you go. Knicks Nuggets, another edition here on the Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. We're going to check in on the poll question real quick before Nick gets out of here today. We ask you at Mike Gill Show, one free agent that must return to the Eagles in 2025. Right now, 86% say Zach Bond, 7% say Milton Williams, 4% say Mekhi Becton, and only 3% say Josh Sweat. So it's evident the Eagles fans want a linebacker back in Philadelphia. Zach Bond, who's your vote, Nick Earnshaw?
See, I'm shocked it's that close. It's got to be between Bond or Becton. I'm going to go Becton. You want to keep that offensive line intact. I would go slight edge Becton over Bond, because that offensive line, that interior, you want to keep that intact for as long as you possibly can, and you found another gem on the offensive side. I'm surprised Becton isn't as close to Zach Bond on that pole.
I'll tell you why I think that is, though, is because Tyler Steen has played well all season long, and I think they figure Steen steps right in. But who steps in for Bond? Oren Burks is a free agent. N'Kobe Dean won't be healthy enough to start the season. They got to make sure they get a linebacker back here. You saw how important it was.
Yeah, listen, I'm all for bringing Bond back. Hopefully they can bring Becton back too. I thought Becton was massive this year.
Milton Williams, man, he's a guy that I'm in on too. If I could pick two, it would be Milton Williams and Zach Bond. They would be the two that I bring back. Now I know the question only says one.
He wants to get paid, and he was wearing a Clutch Sports hoodie today. So I think you kiss him goodbye.
I saw it. All right, that's another edition of the Nuggets. Nicker and Schultz back again. Well, maybe tomorrow. He's going to be at the parade. We'll see if he's in any condition.
We'll see. I'll try and chime in, Mike, but hopefully have a great weekend. If I don't talk to you tomorrow, I'll talk to you on Monday and give a recap.
More Sports Bash coming up. 5 o'clock, Sports Bash, final hour of the show. I'm Mike Gill. What's up, everybody? We got a big show tomorrow on a happy hour Friday. It's the first happy hour Friday with no football for a long time. So we're going to have to spice it up a little bit, right? Phil's at spring training. You know, next Friday, tomorrow's Valentine's Day tomorrow, boys. Next Friday will be the eve of the Phillies preseason spring training Grapefruit League opener, and we are going to be live at 279 Social Kitchen and Craft Bar, the old Romanelli's in Galloway. We will be there celebrating their grand opening, a happy hour Friday, huge celebration. They're going to have live entertainment, signature cocktails, chef-inspired bites, all sorts of specials, and going to have a pair of tickets to go see The Weeknd at Lincoln Financial Field this July. So stop out next Friday for a happy hour Friday at 279 Social Kitchen and Craft Bar with the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN. I want to take this moment, this segment, if you will, to look back at this team, how they got put together, and then what could be next. By the way, if you missed our conversation from yesterday's show with Brian Dawkins, we're going to have that for you in about 20 minutes from now, 25 minutes from now. For the people who missed that conversation with B. Dawk, we're going to air that again coming up at 5:30 tonight on the Sports Bash. It was such a hair standing up on the arms type of conversation with B. Dawk that we want to play that for the people who missed it yesterday in the 3 o'clock hour. So we'll play it at 5:30 tonight for you driving home from work right now. Brian Dawkins will re-air that coming up in about 20 minutes. So I want to go back through this roster. It's a team that was very similar to last year. And that team last year fell apart. What happened? I don't have an answer to that other than I just don't think they were coached well enough. The coordinators were not strong enough because they had the talent last year. That team was good enough to at least make a deep run. For them to get blown out in that playoff game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers suggests to me that they just basically mailed it in. They didn't. The coaching staff just did not have this team. This team, we heard, bought in to the coaches. Nolan Smith said after the game, whatever Vic Fangio has, I want to learn more of. We've heard so much about how much this team respect Nick Sirianni and Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio, not to mention the other coaches on this staff. So I think what happened last year is pretty evident that they just did not have enough trust in Brian Johnson, the offensive coordinator, Sean Desai, and then Matt Patricia, the defensive coordinators. Because you look at the offensive line, same as last year except for Becton. I mean, you had Kelsey here. You had Juergens at right guard. So Kelsey was here last year, and Becton was here this year. That's the only change on the offensive line. You think about it. That is the only change of the offensive line. One of the best players of all time at that position, Jason Kelsey, is out, and Mekhi Becton is in. So the offensive line essentially is the same. Goddard is back. Brown is back. Smith is back. Hurts is back. The addition of Saquon Barkley puts this team on another level offensively. That's obvious. So then let's look at the defense. Hassan Reddick is here. Now, Hassan Reddick is better than any pass rusher the Philadelphia Eagles currently have. Do we agree on that? But losing Hassan Reddick, I guess there's a message there that possibly Hassan Reddick could have been one of the reasons why this team was not performing. There was a lot of reports and rumors after the season that Reddick was kind of searching for sacks because he wanted more money. And the way you get more money is get your sack total up. And that meant teams were kind of running towards him, running at him, and had a lot of success. You saw gaping holes late in that season. You also had terrible, by the way, speaking of terrible linebacker play, did anybody notice who won a Super Bowl ring, who was on the roster and the sideline on Sunday? This was an under-the-radar activation on Sunday for the Philadelphia Eagles. Do you know who I'm talking about?
I'm racking my brain right now because this would have been dropped probably Saturday, like evening when they did the elevations, right?
He was active. I saw him in the mic'd up last night. I did not know he was active on game day. I did not realize it until I saw mic'd up last night.
Was it Nick Morrow?
Nick Morrow was on the field. Not on the field. He was on the sideline. I don't know that he might have played special teams. But Nicholas Morrow was a starting linebacker for you last year, and that was a big problem. Nicholas Morrow and Zach Cunningham were your two linebackers
Don't
last
forget about
year.
Shaq Leonard. That miss.
Yeah, that he didn't really. I mean, he left in training camp, so he was not actually
No,
here.
he left training. No, he was here last year. Remember, they brought him in halfway through the season. He was a late addition when they started having injuries.
Who was the guy that retired?
The guy who retired. Oh, that was. Oh, dagnabbit. What was his name?
Don't use that word ever again on this show.
He played for the Steelers at one point. He went to UCLA. With Miles Jack.
Miles Jack was here. Yes, Miles Jack was here in camp, and he retired. Devin White, we forget he was here this year. Remember that?
This year, yes.
Yeah, he was here this year. Devin White was here. So Howie Roseman hits on Bond because he replaces Nick Morrow, Zach Cunningham. He hits on Bond. They go with Nakobe Dean. That's your starters. They replace Cunningham and Morrow. He hits in the draft, taking the first and second round pick, Quinyon Mitchell. Now remember, he has to make a decision between Quinyon Mitchell and the kid from Detroit that went to Alabama, the corner.
Oh, Terry and Arnold.
Terry and Arnold. They're both on the board when the Eagles make the pick, and he has to make that decision. And most people would say, don't try to outsmart the room. Take the SEC guy. This has been the problem, but yeah, people yelled at Roseman before in the past. You try to get too cute, take the SEC guy. No, he took the guy he thought was the better player, and Quinyon Mitchell turned out to be the better player.
Not just a better player, but arguably one of the best rookie corners of all time.
Yeah, and Cooper DeJean, some people think, had the best corner season out of any corner in the league. I know he didn't play outside corner, but he showed his value. Then they struggled at safety last year. What does he do? He goes and gets Chauncey Gardner-Johnson to come back, and he puts him in there with Reed Blankenship and then the safety position. You look around this team, they didn't have one discernible, noticeable weak spot on the field. There wasn't one spot on the field. You know, some teams you're like, they're a little weak at left guard. They're a little weak at outside corner. They're a little weak at off-ball linebacker. The Philadelphia Eagles this year did not have a weakness. There was not a weakness on the field. How many organizations? I mean, you look at the Chiefs, they won 15 games this year. But they were very weak at left guard. They were very weak at tackle by the end of the season when they had to move Joe Thuney. You know, Thuney hadn't played tackle since he was in college, so he was a guard masquerading as a tackle at this stage of the season. So even that team, the Kansas City Chiefs, who had back-to-back Super Bowls, had been one of the best teams all season long at 15-2, they had weaknesses on the field. Howie Roseman took care of every single weakness this team has. And think about it. He went out, and he did make a mistake, by the way. I can't sit here and say he was perfect. He went out and got Bryce Huff to replace Hassan Reddick. Now, think about this. He trades Reddick away. In return, he gets a third-round pick. So now he's already got a piece to help build for the future by getting rid of a guy, and he wins the Super Bowl. Now, he signs Huff, and I think they really thought Huff was going to be a factor on this team. I did not like the signing. I was very vocal about that when they signed him. My point was, if you're going to replace Hassan Reddick, he's not as good as Reddick, and you got to replace what Reddick did, which was double-digit sacks, and I just didn't see that happening. So I'm not surprised by the fact that Huff was a bustaroni, but he was a bustaroni. So Roseman did go out and get a guy that did not help them. Now, you got to figure out what to do with him because he's making like $17 million next year. So he's just kind of anchoring some money on this cap. Now, James Bradberry did speak today. He said, look, I get a ring, and you can never take away from me that I'm a Super Bowl champion. And apparently, behind the scenes, Bradberry, who, by the way, he'll be cut. He has a $0 dead cap hit, so his time in Philadelphia is now done.
His guaranteed money is up.
Yeah,
yes.
His guaranteed money is done. Bradberry did say that he almost acted like a coach this year, that he worked a lot with Mitchell and DeJean and those two guys, and that, he hopes to maybe get into coaching.
And for those who didn't see also, he said he had a torn Achilles and soleus. So he ripped basically everything from your calf muscle through the heel.
That's why you never heard of him this year.
Yeah.
He was playing safety, if you remember. Then he ends up getting hurt in the preseason.
Remember, we had talked to, I think it was John McMullen. It was back in August, Mike, and he told you, he says, I saw James Bradbury backpedal, and then he just dropped. And then he walked to the sideline, went right to the trainers, and everyone was like, well, what happened to him? And you never saw him on the field again.
Never saw him and never really heard about him. No one ever brought him up. No one ever talked about him. But remember, he was a guy who started on this team last year, so he was replaced. When you look at last year, some of the replacements, James Bradbury out, Avonte Maddox out. That safety spot was a revolving door, and they replaced it with Chauncey Gardner-Johnson.
Well, remember, they started with Edmonds, right? They brought in Edmonds, and they traded Edmonds to get Kevin Byard. Remember that whole thing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there was somebody else, I think. There was Edmonds, and there was another guy from Tampa Bay that they brought in here who had a lot of injury.
Justin Evans.
There you go. He had played a lot. He had a lot of injury problems. Yep. And, so I said, it was a revolving door.
Give me enough hints, I'll guess these guys.
I can remember generally where you went to college or where you played. I just, I'm too old to remember names now, sadly. Like, I'm at the point where, oh, my God, I can't believe I can't remember names anymore.
See, I'm at the point where I will remember the Eagles players' names, but I don't remember the name of the person I just met on Sunday.
Oh, we're all there. That's normal. Like, you meet people and you're like, I don't remember that guy's name. I'm good with faces, but Justin Evans, I remember he was in Tampa Bay. He was a second-round pick. He constantly kept getting hurt. I can tell you the story. I just don't remember your name. But the revolving door at safety, they fixed with Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Then you remember, Hassan Reddick, he's at the edge rushing spot there. He ends up leaving, and you never really replaced him. You tried with Huff, but you draft Nolan Smith, and Smith ends up becoming the player that you're hoping for. Mike, I'm wondering if Nolan Smith becomes this, 8 to 10 sack kind of guy. Like, is he that kind of player where he's like, he's not an elite pass rusher. He's not going to get 15, but can he be like an 8 to 10 or a 10 to 12 guy?
He absolutely can for two reasons. One, because you saw the amount of work you put in from his rookie year to his second year to improve his body. And I think that he's still young enough where he is going to be able to keep improving to become a more balanced athlete. And the second reason I think he can is because I think that when a guy gets a taste of success like he did, and you mentioned him, Mike, earlier this week, he said, I want to learn more from Fangio. He's not saying, I reached the top of the mountain, I'm good. He's saying, no, I want more.
Yeah, he's not resting on his laurels. So every move that Roseman makes, there's a little bit of a story behind it, and it ends up working out. By the way, Roseman, people forget this. The back in 2017, right? Who is the one signing that they made that really kind of? There was a bunch of them, but if you remember in the NFC Championship game against Minnesota, Patrick Robinson, intercepts that pass, and it sets the tone for the whole night. Well, why was Patrick Robinson was a guy that was a first-round pick who had kind of been like a injured, just never lived up to the hype as a first-round pick.
Correct.
He comes here, and he plays for 1 year, has the interception, huge impact. They win the Super Bowl.
By the way, where did he come from?
He was with the Saints, Florida State.
And who else came from the Saints? C.J. Gardner-Johnson originally.
No, that's I don't
know.
So
did
where
Malcolm Jenkins.
Yeah, so you took another guy from the Saints. But my point was, same blueprint with Mekhi Becton, a first-round pick who had injury problems and had been a disappointment. But let's take a 1 year flyer on the guy and see if we can get the best out of him. The Philadelphia Eagles got the best year out of Patrick Robinson that he ever played. That year in Philadelphia, it wasn't just the interception in that championship game. He was steady and solid essentially all season long. It was probably the best season that he ever played. He had bounced around. By the way, he was with the Saints, but when the Eagles got him, before that, he was in Indianapolis. He was in San Diego. So he went from New Orleans to San Diego to Indianapolis, then to Philadelphia. Then he went back to the Saints. But that year in Philadelphia, no, this is a guy who was a first-round pick, disappointment, constantly hurt. The Eagles sign him. Same blueprint with Mekhi Becton. First-round pick, always hurt with the Jets, been a disappointment. Hey, let's take a flyer on this guy for 1 year, and that deal ends up working out. Now, that is why, just going off that blueprint, I think Becton is probably gone.
I can see that. He's also probably the most replaceable guy, right?
They have Tyler Steen. Now, if Becton's interesting because he played guard this year, and he was very good at guard. Does a team look at him as a tackle, or does a team say, no, we really want you to play guard, and we want to pay you handsomely to play guard? I don't know that the Eagles can pay him handsomely. They can probably figure something out because that's what they do. But can another team say, we're going to give you the 5-year, the mega guard deal to come here and play guard?
I think it would make sense just because I think he proved that, he showed you he's more than capable of playing that position. He excelled at that position.
So I guess moving forward here, and we have a poll question up at Mike Gill Show. You can vote over there at Mike Gill Show. You can vote, and we'll read off the results. But Zach Bond, Milton Williams, Josh Sweat, Mekhi Becton. Pick one Eagles free agent that must return in 2025, and it's a runaway right now for Bond. And you can make the argument that that's the right answer, and I don't disagree with that. But Becton is actually ahead of Josh Sweat. And Josh Sweat is a guy that I think was kind of an afterthought all season long until the Super Bowl. So, I don't know. Those are 4 very tough decisions. But my question now becomes, do you get involved and go to that next level of player and go get Myles Garrett?
I think you at least have to have the conversation because I think that, and I'm not saying this to be mean, but I think there was a little smoke and mirrors the Eagles got away with this year. And I think that teams are going to realize what they did for that 10-game winning streak and then through the playoff run that, hey, this is what they're trying to do. They're basically playing off of Jalen Carter. So I think now teams are going to start making adjustments for that.
Well, here's what Bill Barnwell writes at ESPN.com today. He says, it seems like a first-round pick is the bare minimum. 2 first-rounders might be a big ask for a player approaching 30. It all depends on who is sending those picks and where they land. He says if a team's offering a top 10 pick, it might not need to offer much else. But if the Eagles are sending the number 32 pick, there would need to be something more substantial as a second asset going Cleveland's way, especially given their future picks in 2026 and 2027 are also likely to fall towards the bottoms of the round. So he's basically saying the Eagles give you the first-round pick. They're probably going to have to add maybe 2 more picks because, hey, I'll give you my first and my second rounder. That second rounder is going to be at number 32. So, now they do have the extra 3rd-round pick, I think, because of Reddick. So you could try to say first and a third, and maybe, I don't know, is there a player on the Eagles that would be attractive to the Browns? My question for people out there is, like, in 2004, the Eagles had been pretty good. They went out and got Javon Curse. Now, they didn't win the Super Bowl, but that made them that put them in the Super Bowl.
That elevated them.
They got T.O. and Curse. Here's what I want to see the Eagles do this offseason, and I don't know that they can make it happen, but because it's a little different than baseball. But look what the Dodgers just did. They won the World Series and then just said, bleep it. Let's go get better. I want to see the Eagles say, look, we had an awesome defense. Let's put the fear of flipping God in people and go get the best pass rusher we can find. That, my friends, would be like the Dodgers saying, we got Ohtani, we won the World Series, well, let's go get more, and let's make everybody say before the season starts, oh, my God, how are we going to compete with that team? That would be something that could really put this team on another platform, on another plane, on another level.
So 2 thoughts I have really quick. Number 1, remember the Carson Wentz trade, the trade they made to get Wentz originally. They didn't give up all kinds of crazy picks. They staggered the picks after collecting them, right? So the idea is in 2018, they didn't have a first-round pick, but in 2017, they did have a first-round pick. So could you go to Cleveland and say, I'll give you my one this year, but I'll give you a 2 and a 1 in a couple of years from now kind of thing? Like, can you seduce them maybe that way is my first question. My second is, how much of the Andrew Berry used to work for Howie Roseman and then Andrew Berry's brother works in the Eagles front office comes into this, that maybe they could be more likely to make a deal than somebody else could?
Well, these are the teams that Barnwell wrote a whole article about this. Says teams that won't be trading for Garrett, any AFC North team, Baltimore, Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, they're not going to trade him there, okay? Teams with no need for edge rushers, Denver, Houston, the Rams. So they're out. Teams that currently aren't competitive, Carolina, Vegas, New Orleans, New England, Tennessee. So they're saying he's not going to want to go play for those teams. Teams that could be involved in a Garrett trade as a third party. Now, that's interesting. You don't see a 3-team trade in the NFL all that much, right?
Almost never.
Jacksonville, Minnesota, the Giants, and the Jets. Now, he's not going to want to play for the Giants or the Jets or Jacksonville. Maybe Minnesota.
Maybe Minnesota. I mean, I remember years ago, current, newly elected Hall of Famer Jared Allen. Remember when he left the Chiefs and went to the Vikings?
Yeah, I do remember that.
Yeah, kind of maybe that vibe.
So he has 9 teams that are unlikely but plausible: Arizona, Atlanta, Dallas, Green Bay, Kansas City, Miami, San Francisco, Seattle, Tampa Bay, and then 4 teams that he says are maybes: Buffalo, Detroit, the Chargers, and Philadelphia. And then after that, he's got 3 teams that are the Bears, Indianapolis, Washington, as, yes, these are the 3, in his mind, that have the best package to try to get him. And are playoff potential teams. It all fits. So he's got Philadelphia as that team that's right there. And what he says is the Eagles don't need anything to get over the top after blowing out the Chiefs. They're atop the football universe. The ultimate proof of concept for any team trying to stop Mahomes, while a great defensive line is guarantee the team isn't a guarantee that will beat the Chiefs, but it's a prerequisite for beating them. So, in other words, you're going to lose Josh Sweat and possibly Milton Williams. You need to find someone who can rush the passer. The question is, do you want to give up pick number 32 and start there? And what else? I don't know if there's a player on the Eagles roster. Is there a young player or somewhere in there that would be attractive?
Cleveland really needs offensive line help.
The Eagles could help you there, but you're not trading you're going to take Tyler Steen? Probably not.
I mean, Cleveland's offensive line was not good last year.
No, everybody could use offensive line help, and the Eagles have it, but they're not going to trade one of their starters. And you're not going to do a sign-in trade in the NFL. You can't do that. So it's not like you can sign Becton him and then trade him.
Right.
Right? We'll have to think about that. But you guys get involved at 609-403-0973. Coming up next, if you missed my conversation with Brian Dawkins, it's next. Joining us now on behalf of Behringer and Lily's It Takes Two Health Initiative is former Philadelphia Eagle Pro Football Hall of Famer Brian Dawkins as he joins us here on the Sports Bash Live. And B-Doc, I know as an Eagle legend and an Eagle guy, you were walking around Radio Row last week watching that game on Sunday night. Had to be a special moment for you.
Oh, absolutely. It was a special moment. Not only did they win the Super Bowl, which obviously is the number one, they did it in an absolute convincing fashion with that defense playing. I mean, it's only a couple of defenses that were able to hold. I think Denver is the last time something like that happens with Seattle. But, man, they played an outstanding brand of ball, physical, interceptions, turnovers, all of those things. And then they did it all with just the front four. So, man, I'm just so excited, Phillies, of going forward with this team.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, as a defensive player at your peak, you were an AP first-team All-Pro. This team seemingly didn't have, like, that guy. It was just a total team effort, and you saw a guy like Josh Sweat, Milton Williams, obviously Cooper with the interception return. When you watch this defense over the course of the year, Brian, did you think that this was this special of a defense? When did you kind of say, whoa, this defense has something?
Yeah, I would say probably, week 5. When was the bye week? The bye week.
Yeah, right after week 4.
6?
Yep.
4, right? So right around week 7, you can truly begin to see something. I did anyway, begin to see something, right? When Cooper went into the slot, it became a different defense. They begin to play at a different clip. And guys begin to mature into, not just making stops, but getting turnovers. And that also tipped them into the next level, because you don't just want to make tackles. You want to then make game-changing plays, and that's usually getting turnovers, right? And so they began to do that on a consistent clip towards the end of the year and into the playoffs.
Brian Dawkins is our guest, of course, a former Philadelphia Eagle, Pro Football Hall of Famer. Yeah, you're right. I mean, the turnovers in the Washington game, they turn over Patrick Mahomes. I mean, it was a staggering rate that they were able to do that. And you look at Vic Fangio, are you surprised at how much he was able to change from last year, which seemingly was a disaster defensively for them? In 1 year, the change that he was able to get from these guys?
No, I am not. I'm not going to lie to you. When they brought him in, the first person I thought of was Jim Johnson, right? I thought of Jim, and when I say I thought of Jim, it's because when he walked into the building, accountability, also walked with him into that building. Because I've heard about how he then gets on guys. I'll just say gets on guys, and helps them to do things the right way, to get away from mental mistakes and all of those things, but also gives them confidence so they can go do their job better, right? So, again, I saw that in him, and I knew accountability had walked into the building, and if you have the ear to listen to somebody who's willing to tell you, critique you in a way to help you be better, and you're excited about that, that's what you saw happen to this team. Like some of the way that sometimes he may have said things is not the most pleasant. And I'll tell you, one of the reasons that Jim was never mic'd is because every other word would be bleeped out, right? But I'll tell you that there's a caring in that critique as well. That if you do these things and you change this or that, you will be a better player, and I'm confident you can do it, right? Those two, to me, added to this, especially your all-pro middle linebacker.
Yeah, and we heard it from Nolan Smith after the game. He said, I want to take everything that Vic Fangio has, and I want to keep learning. I want more, and that's unbelievable to see. And, you were a part of some really great defenses, and Jim did it a different way. I mean, he sent the house at you. No blitzes the other night. 0. What does that say about the talent this team has?
Yeah, and that obviously that goes to the scouting department, right? How we make that decision. But the scouting department, me being blessed to be there and work behind the scenes, like I know these guys. I know the time that they put in and the details that they put into that. And then, they do a great job of finding Eagles
Now, what is that?
Not
Tell us
everybody-
about that. Tell us about that.
Yeah,
Finding
no, I mean,
Eagles, B-Dog. What does that mean?
I'm not going to get into the details of it, but there's just a different mindset that person should have if you're going to play in the city of brotherly love. I'll say it like that.
Well, I know, like our fan base, we're listening all the time, and in Eagles week, you mentioned Jim Johnson. He has kind of ruined things for other coordinators because they want that blitzing. They want that blitz, buddy ball, Jim Johnson, and you didn't get that this year from Vic Fangio. And I'm kind of interested to get your take when you watch the temperament of this team, the togetherness of this team, and over the last couple of years. Last year, it fell apart, and everybody was wondering what happened. So how were they able to kind of pull out of what happened last year and become this Philadelphia Eagles organization as we know it again?
Well, I said it. Accountability walked into the building, and not just him. I give all your position coaches their due as well, right? How they got all those cats ready to play. But the accountability, I'm telling you, when you're open to then that criticism and that person pointing to you that these things have to be fixed, but also when you're in those meeting rooms, and I'll tell you, when I'm in that meeting room and then I'm getting critiqued about this, it's not just about being critiqued by the coach in front of me. It's about my teammates listening to me being critiqued and me knowing that I let them down. Like that, wow. I don't think people really understand how far cats are willing to go for one another. I hope I said that right.
Yeah,
I don't know if people really understand what cats are willing to do for their teammates, how far they're willing to go, right? So to me, that is what happened during this year, meticulously during this year. Tough conversations were probably had.
Yeah.
And in those closed meetings and behind those closed doors, they decided that we're going to be this when we step onto that field. And we're going to play in this way. We're going to be aggressive. We're going to be physical. We're not going to make mental mistakes. And we're going to have a good time as we do it. And I love to see that.
Brian Dawkins is our guest here. You played for Andy, so you know how prepared his teams can be. They looked ill-prepared, or was it just that Nick had his team so prepared?
Yeah, I mean, Nick and the coaching staff had these guys to a certain level, but the players themselves have come into this postseason with absolute fire in their eye. You can see it. Like you can see the way that they took the field from the first quarter to the last snap, the way that they played offensively, defensively, and let's talk about the special teams, right? Yeah. Some guys stepping up in special teams, making big plays. I think we've had 2 fumbles calls during this postseason run to set the offense up in field position, right? I think, one against the Rams and
Washington.
And Washington shipped Clemson cat from Clemson. So again, that's coaches absolutely giving them, but at some point it has to be that we as players, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to go out and dominate. This is the mindset we're going to have. I'm playing for you, you playing for me, and we playing to get that Lombardi. And that's what they went out and did.
By the way, the passion of B. Dawk in a phone call, you can hear him pounding the table back there. That's how pumped up you are. You go to the parade on Friday, by the way? You going to be there?
No, I won't be there. All
right. Well, it sounds like you were ready to jump on the field on Sunday night, but they didn't need you, man. They didn't need you. I want to get your thoughts.
They got it, brother. No, they got it.
They got it, and they did. They lost. Guys like Jason Kelsey and Fletcher Cox, great Eagles, walked out of the door, and they were able to still persevere. And I guess that comes from both Sirianni, but Jalen Hurts. When you watch Jalen Hurts, the player and the leader, I guess there's no questions as to why this team's at the top of the totem pole.
Well, I mean, yeah, absolutely. And as far as leaders are concerned, usually when you have the alpha cats or the main dudes, I won't just say alpha, but the main dudes speaking, then some of the other guys don't necessarily have or feel like they have to speak, right? Sometimes you just say, we're going to all listen to Kelsey, we're going to all listen to Fletcher. But usually there are those individuals that are leading a little bit behind closed doors. But when those guys have to, move away, then it gives opportunity for those other cats to step up into those spaces. Now, what was the other? And Jalen.
So,
all right. So now we have seen that in the biggest of moments, Jalen plays his best ball.
Yeah.
Right. And so for me, here's what I'll also say. There is no – the hate of him, I don't agree with. The critiquing of him, I agree with. Why? Because Jalen 2 years ago showed me something or a player that I was expecting to see at some point during the season. So when you don't show me that, then I'm going to critique you, right? I'm going to say, well, what happened to where's that dude, right? But then he gets back to that game again, and what does he do? He returns to that dude again, right? So to me, that dude is in it, right? So for me, like when it comes to Jalen, I would love for that dude to kind of peek his head out during the season a little bit.
Yeah.
But if he stays par and just stays to the point of just winning ball games, however it needs to be done, and then you show up like you show up in those big games year in and year out, I don't think the Eagles fan would have a problem with that.
You're right about that.
Really
People ask, is he a top 5, a top 10? It doesn't. He's a number 1 winner. That's what he is. I don't know if he's a top 5. You played with Donovan. Donovan's probably a more talented player than Jalen Hurts, but Jalen is a winner, and that's not to say that Donovan's not, but he's a more talented player, and unfortunately didn't end up with a Super Bowl. Jalen has one, and there's something innate about him inside that I think everybody gravitated to. That guy's special. His messaging's special. You have a special message as well. You're joining us on behalf of Behringer and Lilly's Takes Two Health Initiative. Tell us about that, your part in it, and your involvement in last month's Rose Bowl parade.
Yeah, man, I'm so blessed to be a part of this. Behringer and Lilly allow me to be a part of this. And this hit home for me because my parents, they both have type 2 diabetes, and they both have up and down high blood pressure. And so they fall into the category of people that could potentially go down the path of developing kidney disease. And so once I found this information out, I got it to them and their caregivers so that they can, get the test. And so it takes 2. It takes you and your doctor, and it takes 2 tests. It takes a blood test and a urine test. And so once I found this information out, I got it to them, but I also now, to me, I have the obligation to share this with as many people as possible who may fit into that description as well. And so, there's close to like 35 million individuals that may be going down the path of having kidney disease, but the great majority of them, they don't know. So, it is I feel like it's my responsibility with this information to then spread the word, to have people go to testyourkidneys.com so that you can find out more information, so you can be proactive with your health, so you can stay here healthier longer.
Yeah, absolutely. By the way, that's testyourkidneys.com for more information. Testyourkidneys.com. I mean, in the world we're living in today, there's so many different things health-wise that we need to have awareness of, and that's why Brian Dawkins is joining us today here on the Sports Bash Live, and he's a member of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And by the way, that team that we just watched on the field, maybe the best Eagles team of all time, probably going to have a couple guys joining you in Canton.
I agree. If things continue to play out, there's definitely a couple of individuals that could hear their name being called and don a gold jacket.
Brian Dawkins, always a pleasure to catch up with you, man.
Wait a minute.
And one more time, testyourkidneys.com. B-Doc, thank you so much.
Yes, and get this out. I don't know if anybody has heard this yet, but the Philadelphia Eagles are Super Bowl champs.
Super Bowl 59, the Philadelphia Eagles. Brian Dawkins with the message. Thank you, B-Doc.
All right, be blessed.
Weapon X, baby, here on the Sports Bash Live. Oh, my gosh. The guy sounded like he could get out there and take your head off. You heard him pounding the table. If you're not an Eagles fan and you just heard Brian Dawkins, now you know why the fans are so passionate about this team, because a player like that we got to watch play is so passionate about it. 13 years in Philadelphia, 183 games for the Philadelphia Eagles, 4-time All-Pro first-teamer, and, of course, a Pro Football Hall of Famer. That was Brian Dawkins. That was awesome here on the Sports Bash. And our Sports Bash Super Bowl Recap 59 is brought to you by the experts at Shore Physicians Group, Orthopedic Surgery and Sports Medicine Division. Learn more at shorephysiciansgroup.com. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash. By the way, I said a couple more guys likely going to Canton. Lane Johnson, A.J. Brown, Saquon Barkley, Jalen Hurts, Jalen Carter. I mean, the other guys, Jalen Carter's really young. Quinyon Mitchell, very young. Darius Slay, Hall of Famer? No. Anybody I'm missing? Landon Dickerson. He's got a couple of early All-Pros. Mailata, he doesn't have the accolades. Although this year he was the highest-rated tackle by Pro Football Focus, whatever that means for you. But those five there: Lane Johnson, A.J. Brown, Saquon, Jalen Hurts, Jalen Carter. We'll see what Quinyon's career ends up being like. We'll see what Cooper's. They're not there yet, obviously. Carter's not there yet. A.J. Brown, probably not there yet. But those guys have a shot to get to Canton and the Pro Football Hall of Fame. When we come back, it is the Bet365 play of the day. We'll see how we did last night for y'all out there as well. I'm Mike Gill, and this is the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN.
Drivers who switch and save with Progressive could save hundreds. With that kind of money, you could go big time on a fancy water bottle with ultra titanium alloy metal. You're not sure why you need all that. It just holds water. But you're getting it anyway. Because if you're hiking near an active volcano and you accidentally drop the bottle into molten lava, your water will still be icy cold. Switch to Progressive and you could save big time. For water bottles. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates, not available in all states. Potential savings will vary.
Hey, can you blow up some balloons for Jack's party?
I can't. I'm so congested.
You need Sinex Saline from Vicks.
Sinex Saline Nasal Spray?
Yeah, just Sinex. Breathe.
Sinex Saline instantly clears everyday congestion associated with colds and year-round allergies with a gentle, ultra-fine mist that's no mess and easy to control.
Daddy, we need more balloons.
On it.
Enjoy life's important moments without congestion. Try Sinex Saline from Vicks. Just Sinex. Breathe. Use as directed.
My brother-in-law died suddenly, And now my sister and her kids have to sell their home. That's why I told my husband we could not put off getting life insurance any longer. An agent offered us a 10-year, $500,000 policy for nearly $50 a month. Then we called SelectQuote. SelectQuote found us identical coverage for only $19 a month, a savings of $369 a year.
Whether you need a $500,000 policy or a $5 million policy, SelectQuote could save you more than 50% on term life insurance.
For your free quote, call SelectQuote at 1-800-478-6688. That's 1-800-478-6688. Or go to SelectQuote.com. 1-800-478-6688. That's 1-800-478-6688.
SelectQuote. We shop. You save. Full details on example policies at selectquote.com/commercials.
All right, 5:52, getting ready to get out of here on this Thursday night. By the way, another Hall of Famer, probably Howie Roseman.
Oh, 100% Howie.
And maybe Jeffrey Lurie.
Jeffrey Lurie's an interesting one. He is the only owner that has won a championship with two different head coaches who's not in the Hall of Fame yet.
So somebody texted in Jake Elliott.
He's got a ways to go.
Yeah, I'm not all that up on his, like, where he is scoring-wise
I'm not
and
sure
all that
if he's
stuff.
even the best kicker in Eagles history yet.
Probably over Akers.
You think him over Akers
Probably,
right now?
yeah. I mean, this playoff, I think he was, 11 for 12?
Yeah. Well, he's perfect in the Super Bowl, so.
Yeah. All right. Bet365 play of the day. How'd we do last night?
You went 2-0 last night, Mike. The Denver Nuggets covered the 10.5, barely, but they covered. They got there. Got to 11. And then Duke and Cal was under 143. In fact, it was under 141. It was such a low-scoring game.
There you go. That puts me at
107, 71, and 1.
So we are over 30 games over 500.
That's correct.
If you haven't started taking these plays, and by the way, these are well-researched. There's reasons I pick these complete random games. I don't usually get into the reasons or the stats or the facts behind them, but there's a reason I pick the ones that I do.
I'm not sitting here questioning the formula. You're the baker. I'm not going to tell you how to make cookies.
36 games over 500. Let's make you more money. More money. Here we go. I got the Warriors tonight plus 1.5 against Houston. I got the Pelicans Kings over 235.5.
You said Pelicans?
Yes. They're from New Orleans. And I got the Clippers Utah under 228.5. Got it.
Yep.
That's my Bet365 plays of the day. We'll check in on how we did tomorrow right here on the Sports Bash. Boy, no Flyers, no Sixers until next Thursday.
So
I'm
more
watching The Night Agent.
I was saying more Night Agent.
Yeah, I
for
had
you.
2 episodes last night.
So how are you feeling about the second season? Do you feel it's on par with the first season?
I don't remember the first season. I mean, like, I vaguely, but I'm not like, I don't, like, you know what I mean?
Okay.
So I'm kind of watching it as if it's like a total separate new show. I remember him and I remember Rose. I remember Peter. I remember Rose. But that's it. I don't remember how they met each other, how they know each other, what happened.
It was too long ago.
Yeah, it was like over a year ago. But it's all right. The acting's really bad. Bad acting.
Ooh, that's not good.
It's not good acting. The girl who plays Rose, really bad. He's not great either. But the show has enough premise that I'll keep going.
Have you tried Heels yet?
Heels, I have not tried. What platform?
Netflix.
Oh, okay. I thought that was Hulu for some reason.
No, it's Netflix.
All right, well, we'll look at that because no Sixers, no Flyers, no football. I'm back tomorrow, everybody. Have a great night.